back, everybody. We have a good agenda this evening. We have minutes that were to be reviewed and ready for approval. So are there any, let's take the November 20th first. Any suggested adds, deletes, edits? Yes, Don.
Not, just a confusion. I have in the various things that I've received over recently, two sets of minutes.
For December 18th?
Is it December 18th?
Yes.
Okay.
So one was packaged as notes, and then the abridged version is actually what we'd like folks to adopt as the minutes.
Okay. All right, so going back to the first.
Yeah, November.
I have kind of an overall question about minutes. Since we have been a group of varying personnel and unestablished means to make decisions, do minutes serve us in a particular way?
I think we need a paper trail.
Yeah, I mean, we can call them notes, we can call them minutes. It's been pretty, the seats, I know the people may have changed, but generally the seats have been the same in terms of representation.
I think they're important. I don't think minutes are supposed to capture every significant thing that's said in a meeting, but they should capture who spoke, was there a vote, what the significant, perhaps, issues that were discussed were, so that when it comes time to put together a presentation, you've got a written document of what happened, as opposed to saying, what were the alternative, when was this discussed, I remember it differently, stuff like that.
And we have the video as well.
Right.
So I would tend to agree with Bob. Important votes.
All right, I move to accept the minutes of November 20th, 2014 as presented.
Which one?
No, you got the 20th or the 18th?
Oh, it's November 20th.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about November 20th. Okay.
Right.
I thought we were on the 18th. Okay.
No.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor here at the table today?
Aye.
How about the December 18th minutes? Again, that's the short version,
A single page
it's a
versus.
single page, double-sided, I believe.
No.
Is it only on one page?
It's on one page.
It's on one page, okay.
Who's taking these minutes, by the way?
The November 20th minutes, were those yours? Or
I
those mine?
submitted them, yeah.
Yeah, November 20th, Bob took those, Lorraine and I took on December 18th, and so the compilation, Lorraine did the heavy lifting and getting it down to a nice page, crisp page. Do we have a motion?
I move to accept the minutes of December 18th as presented.
This is a two-page version.
No, single page. Okay, go ahead. Single page. The other is just background.
It says
information.
Emerson School Bolton on the top.
Yeah.
For December?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So two sides of one page.
No.
No, it's just one
It
side.
says Emerson School
I
Bulletin
see.
at the top.
Yeah,
The other one does not say that.
Got it.
I have one, item 2, item 3, item 4.
Oh, yeah, item 7.
Package. We'll get these up on our website as well.
Any second.
Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so the meeting tonight is about the facility's existing condition.
Pass around mine. Some information I put together that we can reference tonight. Okay, so to start off, this point was to clarify operation needs driven by age and condition of the building, and if there are any concerns, then the next items. One of the, I would say the most asked question to me as in the high school and going through the different meetings are, what can we do about space? And I think we've already touched on that repeatedly, and we know that space is an issue. We have identified some, areas that we could work space in, whether it's adding classroom space, changing some classroom space. Last year, we split the art room in half in order to get us another area. We've moved rooms pretty much consistently during the summer over the past few years to try to, take the ASC from one area, move it to another, move one classroom here to there. So we have tried to address space in all the small ways we possibly can within the school. The next kind of round of space would be costly. That's where renovations would come into play, changing space, knocking walls down. So we haven't quite jumped that hurdle yet. It's been discussed, but I think that's something that, hopefully out of this committee we could talk more about. So space is always the first need that comes my way. Currently, the mechanical systems meet the needs of the space that we have. It has some issues that we have been trying to work through, but the boilers are in good shape, and you can see I passed out in the handout I gave you, there's a few pages back we'll get into, describes each one of the building systems. I don't think we need to go into detail there, but I wanted to provide it to you, so if you had any questions about it, they were there. The mechanical systems at the high school, our current capabilities, and if we did any type of expansion or renovation in the building, I wanted to touch bases on each one of them. The water in the system, we run off a well, and currently it meets the capacity of the building. We had no issues with the well. We changed out the pump last year, but the well is a good flowing well. I don't see any issues if we do any type of expansion. The one problem I see is that our well is located inside the building. It's actually, which is a little odd, it's inside the walls, which in any type of substantial renovation, I believe we would be required to relocate the well. So that may be an issue, it's something that we'd have to look at.
Was it a challenge to pull that pump when it was inside the structure?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it took us, we worked for almost 2 days straight. Through last February, we had a pump failure over the weekend. So in order to get school back in session, we had to get a saw and actually saw cut out a section of the sidewalk, get a crane, lift it, and then pull the pump from underneath the sidewalk in freezing cold and
Coldest day.
coldest day we had. It was brutal. So so yes, it is difficult to access. We do have the ability to do it, but it's
So effectively, you created a trap door in order to get out to get a
right.
crane to
And then in order to
pull
make
out.
it safe again, I had to re-pour and reset that concrete. So if we ever have to get to it, I need to cut again.
So that's sidewalks inside the wall of the building?
No, actually, it's outside. It's kind of an odd setup. It's located in the boiler room area, and it's underneath. If you go to the rear of the school by where the loading docks are, it's actually underneath the loading dock sidewalk, but below that is a basement, and that's where the well pump is, the wellhead is. But in order to pull it out, you do have to cut a hole in the sidewalk. There's an old hatch there, but over the years and years it's been there, it's as good as concrete, so that was the only way to get at it.
So what's in the middle of the football field? I thought there was a well in the middle of the football field.
No, there's no well. There is a Zone 1 DEP radius around that wellhead. It's a 270-foot radius that goes around, so that does capture about 90% of the football field.
Okay.
There was a 2-inch feed that went out to the middle of the football field that was for irrigation for the old turf,
Okay.
but we pulled that back when we did the field.
Because you don't need it.
We don't need it out there, and if there was ever a pipe burst underneath the ground, we didn't want to have to contend with that with the new
mapped out.
So should regulations require a new well, can one be located given the circle that you need to put around a well as a public water supply?
I don't see any problems with it. I mean, the DEP has been very good with us as far as, engineering and design wise. We just have to be, where the
Other
best
people in
spot
our
would be.
town have had very negative experiences about the flexibility of the DEP and water.
Yeah.
Well, when we, Center School had the same circumstance. The well was inside the building, we had to relocate it, and we were able to relocate it
Mhm.
actually within our Zone 1, existing Zone 1.
Yeah, once they do a relocation, our new Zone 1 area would be a new radius, and it may affect how we fertilize or do other work on the fields, but it should be possible if required in the future.
So how much of a renovation would you have to do before they would say that you have to change the well?
Usually it falls into what they say is substantial renovation, and that's always up to, the purview of the building inspector and the local authority, so it'd be hard to tell.
And it's conceivable the well is sufficient to maybe even handle a substantially increased use, but it's just about a regulatory regime that may cause it to move.
Correct.
Right? It could be as perfectly adequate for twice as many people, but it's in the wrong location.
Right, we've had no problem with the flow of water in the well. We have plenty to run irrigation, but it would just be if there's a regulatory need to relocate. That'd be something that we'd have to keep in mind.
If the well in the circle covers most of the football field, doesn't it also cover most of the building?
Yes. Yes, it goes right around through the building. I don't know if today you'd be able to do the same without a fairly substantial battle, but
Would not be allowed to do that now.
no. So that's why I'm thinking if we did some sort of substantial renovation or work in the building, I believe that would be a requirement to upgrade or move the well.
I mean, generally, having to deal with kind of building codes and renovations and additions and stuff for what I do for work, generally, any renovation or kind of whatever needs to meet the new codes at the time, but any base building services don't retroactively get upgraded as part of that,
Right.
that process.
We
So
haven't
you
had
wouldn't
any-
have to necessarily, my opinion, that you'd be talking about having to relocate the well. If you're putting in a new well, then the new well needs to kind of go in appropriately. But if you have an existing well, the existing well can remain in place and service even in addition. It just, kind of new needs to meet new, but existing can kind of remain
Depends on
kind
the
of
volume
as
of
is.
output and what you're required to meet with a new expanded building.
And I agree with you, David, and I should clarify, we only had to move the well because the building that it was under was being demolished.
Depends on our scope.
But you're introducing an interesting new wrinkle to this, which is that any construction within that 280-foot circle is going to meet some stiff resistance from DEP.
Yes, it meets regulatory requirements. It has to be brought before DEP for approval, which we ran into when we did the turf field, I had to
Right.
go in front of DEP and get approval for that. And again, they were willing to work with us. They understand our constraints. They asked if we had other options, and we bounced a few ideas back and forth, but they were willing to work with us.
Is that the Worcester office that you deal with? Or
Yes, that was the Worcester office. Next item is the septic sewer. We have a wastewater treatment plant. When it was designed with extra capacity, quite a bit of extra capacity. I do not see any issues here with any type of, renovation or expansion of the building. The system is in good shape. It's managed well through our contracts that we have that come in there, and we should have no issues there, increasing capacity if needed.
where is it located?
When you look at the front of the building, and actually on the last page of this, you can see it. Bottom left corner below the student parking lot, to the left of the building,
Yep.
there's a smaller structure there, and that is the wastewater treatment plant. About 2/3 of that is the plant, 1/3 of that is facility storage, like a garage over there for us.
And the field is even further closer to the road, is that square with
Leach field?
The
Yes,
field.
in front of the building is the leaching
Closest to
field.
117.
Yeah, correct. Close to to the left of the 117 entrance, that's the leaching field. To the right of the 117 entrance, that grass area is the future leaching field in case we ever have
Spare field.
a spare field in case we ever had a failure with the primary, we have a backup.
How often is that, the tank, a substantial tank, obviously?
Well, we have the leaching field and then we have the processing facility inside, so that
So you don't,
process.
so it's not the same as a residential where you have to pump out a tank?
No,
This is
we do
process.
we do still pump, because we have to pump the system and we change the filters,
Yeah.
but it is a processed product. And we have a company that is on contract that manages all our wastewater treatment plants across the district as well as the water.
So you say it's oversized, so how much oversized capacity do you have?
I've been told we have about an additional 40% in there. I haven't confirmed that number, but it is a substantial amount. There was, I believe, the initial design and thoughts were that other municipal areas were gonna tie into it, which I don't believe ever arose.
No, but when they,
Minimum
when Bolton looked into their issues for the historic district here along 117, that was under consideration, active consideration to tie into it. And I
For the
think
high school or the
into the high school. And then it, as I understand it, the cost of the piping essentially from roughly the church up was exorbitant beyond what people thought they should pay, and they decided to build their own wastewater treatment plant here.
So we do have capacity there.
And the regulatory regime there, is that the DEP or the Board of Health or in combination?
A combination of the two. Next, we have electrical. Currently, the service we have in the building is, older. It was put in when the building was put in, but it's adequate for what we need. We don't have any type of issues with brownouts or any type of power distribution. Again, with new construction or renovation comes upgrades of services and upgrades to current code. So depending, there may be some need to do, an energy audit and figure out what type of service we may need.
So there was no electrical upgrades in the 1999 renovation?
No, the distribution panel and everything in the boiler rooms are original.
And then when they added all the electrical outlets, because this is from 1951, when they added all the electrical outlets for communications or telecom, they didn't upgrade that either?
Not the main panels, no. Those are original.
So you've got sub-panels, new sub-panels, and they were able to handle it?
Yes, they were able to put new sub-panels throughout where they needed and was able to handle it. Again, the feed coming in from National Grid may be sufficient for any type of upgrade. We have a transformer out back, but that would have to be assessed. I believe any type of substantial work would require some electrical. There's some.
What's the nominal service amperage, or do you have a
Which
sense of that?
Well, we have 460 volt 3-phase as the primary coming in, then we have multiple step-down transformers that bring it out for our lighting, the 277 as well as.
Right, that's
100.
voltage. Do you know what the amperage
I don't have
service is?
the amperage.
Okay.
What size is your transformer?
I can get you that information, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
The efficiency, and I guess I want to ask you this, because I think you may know. When was the electrical system put in, the original? Because it is original, what was the year of it?
The original system would have been when the building was built. so it's
61. Yeah.
61?
Yep.
So, if the electrical system was built in '61, and we have all these efficiencies now, can you give us any idea of what the drain or the relief on the budget might be from?
Well, I think there's two separate things. I think what you're saying is the main service coming into the building hasn't been upgraded since originally. There have been electrical upgrades.
Correct. The
As part of the
building has been
1999
upgraded electrically.
renovation that didn't impact the main service coming in, but impacted sub-panels and running new circuits and doing all the stuff that needed to be
Correct.
done over time. So there's electrical upgrades, it's just, they're not the overall base building kind of main service upgrade. So, there's newer code requirements and there's more demand and more.
Right, and
gearing.
everything down there works great. We have no problems with it. It's just I want to bring it up that if we do decide to do a substantial type of renovation or that would be an area that would have to be explored, and, you know, an engineer would have to look at it, and there may be a requirement.
The electrical service. But, you know, Bill Spratt was really big on electrical efficiency stuff.
Right.
And so I imagine that all the mechanical, when that got switched over, was all, you've got VFDs and,
Right, and we still have that
Yeah.
program. Just
They're
last
okay.
year, we replaced every bulb in the building through a grant with National Grid to a T5 type, you know, high efficiency bulb. We do a lot of work on the, continuing on with new motors, new VFDs, you know, the shut off the lights initiative, make sure that still goes on, so.
Has there been any noticeable decrease in usage with all of these increased efficiencies?
Yeah, over the years, when, you know, Bill started the program, he was showing, you know, a trend going down, you know, upwards of 20 or so % savings. In the time since, we still see that, you know, we're still keeping a level 0. So although we've had energy cost increases, the goal has been to try to keep, you know, keep pace with that with decrease in usage. And that's through, you know, like I said, the lighting initiatives. And
Any initiative for looking at solar?
I'm actually in the process of looking at some solar initiatives. One of the, putting solar panels on the roof, I'm cautious about, because, you know, our roof is also an aging roof, and once you put a 20 to 30-year item on that roof, you run into problems, but there are some other options that are popping up and becoming available that I'm exploring now. You know, some of these solar farms and.
are you working with National Grid or independents?
I work with National Grid as well as independents that work through National Grid, such as, you know, the net metering, solar farms, the independent contractors that come in and do some different work, and like working with National Grid, getting the lights in over this summer. So we do work on those programs as much as we possibly can.
One other thing that would change, like doing an addition to the building or kind of whatever, that any of those new pieces need to be new, and there's a much more stringent energy code requirements and kind of on a number of things, including electrical and
Right, we learned that at
insulation,
center
kind of all
school
that
is,
stuff, yeah.
once you start getting into the leads points, and there's a lot there, and that, go through it, even in a renovation, we'd be required to meet. And then the thought is, once you do a renovation, we'd be looking at upgrading a lot of the services. Most of the things that we're looking for on our list, computers and technology, are powered by electricity, so there would be a demand for that, as well as, you know, infrastructure for networks and systems. But,
So you're in charge of the network now?
no, that's Chi's side. I work with them. We work in tandem. Currently, we're upgrading throughout most of the buildings in Lancaster, as well as the high school. We're upgrading the wireless network. So my team has been running all the network cables, while his team is installing the wireless heads. So we've been working that together.
Who designed the system?
They had an outside contractor come in. I believe a consultant came in, worked through the IT group, and identified areas that needed additional service. Okay, next item is gas propane. I put it here. We don't have gas. I know I see things in the, you know, paper of potential, but I think for the short term or near term, doesn't look like there's any type of gas there. We do have a few limited propane tanks on site that run certain things in the machine shop. But if we did a substantial science lab renovation, it would be necessary to have some sort of upgraded propane system in, so that, you know, most of the labs they run, you know, it's nice to have that ability to have the gas on the counter as well as the water to do the experiment. So not a big cost, but I wanted to make sure we
Has
captured
anybody
it.
from the Bolton Energy Committee approached you about what your demand for gas might be if they were to convince one of the energy companies to put something down Main Street?
No,
Okay.
I spoke with some members of the advisory committee, and we spoke about that, who had a contact there that was going to try to reach out, and we talked about some of our demands.
A member of the advisory committee?
Yes.
Sorry, that's the same person who's on the energy committee.
Okay,
that's
great, so then the answer is
That's
yes.
good. Okay.
We have been in contact, and we actually walked through the building and spoke a little bit about that as an
Okay.
option for future.
Now I understand that you're actually not fed by natural gas, but the gas in the labs is fed by propane tanks sitting here at the side of the building. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So any type of upgrade would also require,
There are no gas lines in Bolton, except for the,
Proposed
the
one.
one that delivers it from one side of Bolton to the other without any
Right.
stops there.
and normally the science lab anyway,
Right.
even if you had natural gas in the building, would be fed with
Right.
propane, so.
And the interior pipes for that, are they running underneath the floors, or they go around the outside of the building and then into the appropriate parts of the building?
They run inside the building, tanks are set outside, they run inside the building through the basement and crawl spaces and then
Yep.
pop up into the
So they're
science
actually
labs.
accessible, you don't have to destroy the floor to put in new pipe?
In some areas, we would.
yeah.
Some areas, it has been run through the slab. It goes into the building, then there's some underground chases that, you have to crawl through. They pop up into floors and then run underneath the slab and then come up inside the cabinets.
Yeah, at the last time, when we were looking at the science labs in, was it 2010 or 2011?
11 maybe?
Configuring them, wasn't there gonna have to be a lot of floor work done
Yes.
to run new conduits?
Because there's water underneath, electrical, as
Right.
well as the gas services.
So if you were to just reconfigure the current science labs, you're gonna be doing a lot of ripping up the conduits under the floor now and then creating new ones. And that would be that would be expensive.
Next item on the list is fire and sprinkler. Any upgrade in the building would also require a substantial upgrade of the fire control system and a fire alarm system in the building.
So that wasn't upgraded in '99?
There were components that were upgraded in '99, but they were tied into a panel that I would say is probably about 30 years old. And at this point, it's fairly maxed out. There's cards in there that accept inputs from the different devices around the building. And I've been told we're at our limit in this panel that we have. And it's an older panel, so, there's a little bit of work there. If we did do any type of expansion or renovation, there would be a requirement to upgrade the panel to meet the new demands.
If you upgraded the panel, do you have to upgrade all the devices that feed the panel?
No. Nope, the devices would be fine. It's just a matter of the panel that would need to be upgraded to handle more inputs.
Okay.
So there's no more zones, there's no more input, you're maxed out?
Correct. We're at this point maxed out. We actually had to add a head and we had to piggyback off another unit in order to make it happen. So they said, any type of substantial renovation, we'd need to do something more here.
And the other thing is a 30-year-old fire alarm system is past its useful life. I mean, kind of the reality is that's
The panel would,
reality.
the panel would need to be redone. I mean, it's just a reality. If we did any type of major renovation, that would be something we'd have to work on.
And you're calling a major renovation,
I'm sorry?
what are you calling a major renovation?
I would say any tear down and rebuild, adding, any type of space to the building that required additional heads. So I think we could get away with adding a few more, there's always, but if, we did anything that was 10, 15 rooms, we'd have to do something with the panel.
What if we added, the school committee voted to accept the portable unit from
Isn't
Stowe.
voted yet, but yes.
So we need an update on
Yeah.
that, but what if we added that mobile?
I believe there we would probably be looking at 2 heads or so, and I should be able to get that into the current panel. It's just a matter of running the wires back there. It's a little bit of a... And I'm working with the building inspector and to speak with him about requirements for a sprinkler as well as tying into the existing fire control system. See what we're going to need to do there.
So just a dog leg and then we can
Yep.
get back to this, but just if we can chase down that one piece, if we can get that unit. Do you know what that would take on your end in order for us to implement that, put it, I don't even know what the terms are in marketing, so.
What's that in order to...
To actually connect it to the
Get it up
building and
and
make
running.
it functional.
Classroom space.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm working with the building inspector, so once I can figure out what the requirements are as far as fire alarm and sprinkler, those are the items that I think are going to be the tricky areas. Everything else, it has its own mechanical system, so it has its own heating and cooling system, and it's a matter of breaking it down, which the town of Stowe successfully did with the second modular and moved it over to their DPW yard. And I actually just went over there last week and saw them, and Looks nice.
Nice.
They did a really nice job.
So you're on this?
Oh, yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
great.
I've been over to the building multiple times. I met with the DPW in Stowe to ask about their process they went through, and it was a real successful process. I have the contractors that they used to actually pick, break down, and move the unit that I'm in contact with. So it's just a matter of the next steps are
Letting the town know we're taking it?
we've even started
that
crossing that
conversation.
bridge, so we're there. It's a matter of what are the requirements for installing? What are they gonna require us to do? Then I need to work a little on the design, exactly where we're gonna place it, what type of passageway we're gonna need to build to get from the school to the building. So we'll have to build, so we don't have to walk outside and then back inside. And then again, what the use of it's gonna be. And
Yeah.
that's what we've been
Has
discussing.
anyone decided what it's going to be used for? I mean, is it going to be generally used, or are you going to make them labs?
Hasn't
Well,
been,
They'll be general use, they can't be labs. It would take that much more to get water to them, they don't have water. Or gas.
right, water or gas right now.
It's gonna be set on a slab.
No, it would be set on piers.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
The sprinkler system, does that have a tank or is that straight out of the well?
No, little of both. We do have in the back, far right corner of the property, if you look again on this back page, top right where this, up behind the field, you see the little bump out of the asphalt on the upper right corner, almost by the scale slide?
Where there's a bunker kind of
Yes.
object?
The bunker.
The bunker.
Inside the bunker is where the fire pump is located. There's also a 40,000-gallon storage tank in there that is fed off our well, but maintains 40,000 gallons of
In the building
water.
or the ground.
So that's what's in the
That's,
bunker?
it's part in the building, and then the bunker is actually built into the hill, so then it goes back into the ground under the hill.
Cistern.
Yeah, right. And that's a 40,000-gallon system that from there pumps behind the school and into the fire distribution pumps to the building.
So it's not a gravity feed then?
It is not a gravity feed, no. There's a large pump in there, about a
And
50 horsepower
is
pump.
that electrical system independent from the rest of the school?
Well, it's tied into the same panel, but it's also backed up on the emergency generator. That is one area
Okay.
that is, the
Okay.
school is backed up. We have one common generator, which is located right by the bunker.
Okay.
We actually have two generators. One of them feeds the wastewater treatment plant, and the second one is the one that feeds all the emergency power in the school,
Okay.
as well as the fire suppression system.
Okay, I wasn't aware there was the.
Yeah, and-
Okay.
And that's tested annually, and, we have to run the pumps and make sure everything's working fine.
So hypothetically, if the school increased by a third, the issues that relate to that tank and feed water pump, would it be sizing of the pump and also size of the tank? Are those
Correct.
the main issues for you as an operations person?
Right, that would
Actually,
be,
well, it wouldn't. So as a fire protection engineer that
Oh,
designs those systems, all that stuff is designed on a remote area basis. So, it's over 2,500 or 5,000 square feet, and it kind of doesn't matter how big your building gets. That's still the remote area. You move it around, and you might have to get more pressure to kind of push the water further. But as far as flow and the size of the water storage tank, it shouldn't change.
so
if
there
it
may
is
be a
appropriate
pump
size.
requirement, but
Yeah, it would only be dealing with pressure, and that doesn't necessarily mean you'd be swapping out your pump, because there's things you can do with swapping out impellers and different things to boost the water pressure. So that's what the pump just takes the water, comes in, and tries to boost up that same volume of water. It doesn't create water, it just moves the same gallonage through it and pumps up the PSI. So the pump in the kind of water storage tank doesn't necessarily change.
that'd be great, thank you. And then finally, mechanical systems. Currently, our mechanical systems meet the need that we have in the building, and it supplies plenty of heat, it does what it needs to do. But it is designed for the specific space we have. The boilers do have about a 20 to 30% redundancy, but that's really built in so they can,
What does that mean to a non-builder?
what, on a normal design day, a normal winter day, one boiler can operate and run this building. And it gives us the ability to call what's lead lag. Instead of just having one boiler constantly running and putting the wear and tear, they jump from boiler to boiler. When it turns on, one boiler will run 50% of the time and the other will run 50%. On a very cold, 0-degree type of day, both boilers do need to run. So any additional square footage in the building, any substantial additional square footage in the building would require either it's independent mechanicals or an upgrade to what we have. But for what we have today running, they operate well, they're in good shape, and they're doing, a nice job. How old are the boilers? These boilers were installed, I believe it was 2002? Yeah, 2002.
You may have touched on it just now, but in the course of the past few months, we've heard about different parts of the school that don't get air conditioning or they don't get heat. And I understand the premise here that for the square footage we're trying to cool or heat, we have enough capacity in terms of cooling system. But do we have some just very long runs
Yes.
where, in theory, the boilers, no matter how big a boiler you put over here, the fact that it's got to run through such a long pipe, it's going to lose all of its heat no matter what you do.
We do have those issues, and that's some of the control issues we struggle with. We have a good control system in the building that we can, electronically actually see what's going on, and each one on a computer, so we can see temperatures coming out, but that is some of the areas we struggle with. The boilers are located by the auditorium underground, and when they have to pump all the way over to the science wing of the building, we do lose some efficiency. And then in the walls of those buildings, they're block walls, no insulation,
Right.
and the windows aren't as efficient as they should be. So even though you're running heat into the room, it does.
So if you were to put
Cause a
another
challenge.
block of classrooms, even if it's just 4 or 6, if you were to add that, you're really looking at having a separate mechanical system for that,
Absolutely, yes.
as opposed to just extending those runs further.
I wouldn't tie into the existing system we have, because
Self-contained.
we're balanced. We work very hard on the preventive maintenance side and the, getting up into the ceiling, seeing what's happening with the distribution boxes, with the plumbing.
Right.
And we've got the system balanced, and we stay on it pretty aggressively.
Okay.
I think any type of addition, I would work independent mechanicals on,
Okay.
whether it be a heat pump type system.
That's
And you keep
Good to
saying
know.
substantial increase. Are you still talking about 10 to 15 rooms?
Yes,
Substantial
yes,
increase?
I'd say 10 to 15 rooms would be substantial.
And with whatever you had to add for that HVAC system, could that somehow be a backup to improve the runs that we have difficulty to get to now?
No,
'Cause it
I
can't be tied
wouldn't,
in
right, I
together.
wouldn't tie it into the system, and if we did something in that type of scope, I'd probably do, like a roof-mounted heat pump or a roof-mounted independent system that would just be for those classrooms.
You wouldn't do ductless
I think ductless is a great option.
because you get AC?
Right, well, that's where, like a heat pump type ductless system, we did that at Hale, and there's one right there now. We just put in, that's both heat and AC, so I think it's a great option, very efficient, and it allows for independent control in each room, so I think that's an option to explore, rather than tying into the existing system.
What about hot water? Is that the same situation? The runs are just too long?
Hot water, we haven't had too many problems with. The runs are long, but, what we do is we can boost the temperature, and then we put mixing valves in so that, we can regulate.
Okay.
We may run, higher temperatures through the lines, and then when they hit the room, we reduce it down with the
Okay.
mixing valves. So,
Okay.
we have an in-house plumber that's
Okay.
very aggressive with managing
But
those
that's
areas.
not an
and
issue.
Testing water temperatures.
Okay.
So recently, some of the challenges I see that we have, so we talked a little bit about what is the building capable of handling mechanically. There's options beyond that to reverse commission the building and to truly see what we have in there, what the capacity is. And that would be, like we did at Center School after they completed the construction, a commissioning agent comes in, checks the prints, checks what we have, and makes sure that everything meets. Reverse commissioning, they really come in, see what you have, and they let you know, what you have, what the capabilities are, and so that's an option.
Mhm.
Can be expensive, but it's, I wanted to throw it out there as.
Can you say just a few more words about that? Is just sort of looking at the situation you've got and testing it. in the actual building and seeing how everything's responding? Is
Right,
that
it would be
what
an
the process
engineering
is?
firm that would come in and, they bring their electrical, mechanical, all their contractors in, or their engineers in, and they'd look at the different systems and say, well, you have these boilers that control this space, that run through these distribution boxes, and these ones work, these ones don't. The airflow in this room is off, the airflow in this room is too high. So they would look at that, and they'd give us back a report that really details what's going on in the building, further than what we can do in-house. Our goal in-house is to maintain
Right.
comfortable temperatures in the rooms and as much efficiency as we can through shutting the boilers off at night and turning them on, and, making sure we're efficient. So some of the challenges I see, especially when looking at the budget and what we can do, is where do we spend the money? And I think that's something that, as a committee, we can talk about. We recently replaced the roof over the entryway to between the upper and lower gym. So that was a substantial cost that we went in and had to pull the roof off because it was leaking, and redid that roof just this past summer. Now, there's other roofs that over the next years are gonna also need to be replaced. There's windows that should be replaced, and I think it's, kind of coming up with our long-term plan of what's gonna be good money to spend on which project.
Do you know the answer, approximately how many windows, or how much of the building have we replaced the windows to date?
I've done most of the windows in the connector where we connect to the science wing there, those two connecting, because they were plate glass windows, and I'm nervous, obviously, if a student banging into the window, and plate glass can be nasty stuff. So I've replaced those with tempered glass. Still single pane, because to do a new curtain wall with double pane windows would be far beyond the budget we could handle. So that's really been
That's it?
the push of the window changes. The windows that are in the science lab are, they are double pane, but they
Oh, they
need
are.
aluminum, and they're inefficient. They are double pane.
Well, you've already said that you've changed, some of the connector. But have you worked with a plan where maybe every year you change out like a certain number of them?
Yes, I've been doing this over the
mean-
past 2 years.
So what percentage do you think I've done? Is
I would
complete?
say I'm probably about 80%.
You're 80% complete?
80% complete with the windows around the connector. The major windows in the areas where I feel kids horse around in the hallway and could bang into glass
It's a safety issue.
has been
Yeah.
changed as a safety issue.
Not an
The-
energy issue, just a safety.
More of a,
Yeah.
right, more of a safety issue than an energy issue. The windows I still need to get to are the smaller ones on the bottom that don't really have the potential to be hit. So I focused on the larger windows that I think have a safety issue. But
So-
it doesn't do a whole lot for our efficiency.
How about roof replacement? What percentage has been replaced recently?
Well, we did 3,000 square feet, so I'd say we probably replaced about maybe less than 20% of the roof is what we did last summer. And I could get you a real accurate number on that, I just don't have it off the top of my head, but I'd say in the ballpark, about 20% of the roof.
So how much of the roof do you think needs to be actually replaced eventually, like in the near future?
I would say over the next 10 years.
Are you saying 100% of it over the next 10 years?
No,
Or
I would say we're probably looking at about another 70% of the upper roof over the next 10 years. We have above the auditorium, although it's 2002, it's a ballasted roof. We do have some leaks. I think over the next 10 years, we would need to do some substantial repairs up there or replacement. The area above the offices right now in the front above guidance, that has to be pulled apart and replaced. We have some issues with water leaking through the flashing and getting into what used to be the old rubber roof underneath and running and causing leak issues. And then the roof over the science lab, we had some leak issues. But I think we're looking, the roof we just did this past summer was the critical area. I think everything else, we have a few years to look at over the next 10 years that need to be addressed.
But there's so many different, you know, it's not, this isn't one complete roof, it's different pieces.
Correct.
So you could piecemeal it, you could.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's, like I said, the next 10, 15 years or so, taking small sections like we did this year.
So is that part of a master plan of some sort?
I think that's something that part of this is, our long-term plan of what we're thinking to do with the school and what, where we'd like to spend the money. If we're looking at some renovations, it may be, maybe we look at certain areas that would need a new roof or the mechanicals replaced or windows
Yep.
that could be replaced and try to couple the replacement of those as a cost savings to what the renovations would be.
Okay.
And then, so the next page is here. Talk a little bit about the building system, some of the more technical aspects. I wanted to put them in there just so you had it. If you have any questions on that, I'm always happy to talk to you about it. I went through a little bit of the building history, talks, the size of the site, the parking spots, what we talked about the mechanical systems, how they work. And then, we try to maintain best practices as far as preventive maintenance goes. And, we do have building management systems that we, catalog all the systems that are running in the building, and we can actually watch it. We can log into the computer and watch it really anytime. We get alerts and alarms throughout the evening that tells us if there's a pump that went down or a temperature that's in the wrong area, so that we can protect the building, rather than waiting till the morning when people show up to find out there's a problem. Next page shows a little bit of the layout of the main and lower floors of the high school. And then what I looked at, just very rough, and this is the page that has the blue and green dot in the middle, is an area that I think has potential for renovation. And it could be single story, it could be two-story, it could be a combination of new, combination of renovation. I think the area of the upper gym and the auditorium where that was built in 2000, in that area, that's probably something that, is gonna remain. And then the other side where the science labs are, again, is a good structure, could use some updates, could use some renovations. But the area in the middle, I think, is where we have, there's some potential. Currently, the building is, we talked, it's 188,000 gross square feet. The total area sits about 188,000. The MSBA gave us that number of about 272,000 square feet of space that they recommend based on our enrollment and, our needs. So by monopolizing this space in the middle that I called out for a two-story type renovation and expansion, gives us the ability to look at about 320,000 square feet, which is about 15% over the MSBA recommendations. And again, the layout, how it's done, that's for, architects and designers to come up with it based on what the needs are. But I just wanted to show that there is the potential there.
Now, how many stories is that piece currently?
Currently, that's single story.
So-
Except to the far left over here, this is two stories.
Okay.
So my thought is, looking at that area as maximizing the space and making it two stories would give us the potential of just over 300,000 square feet in the same footprint we have now. Obviously, I'm not taking into account courtyards and design features, but just want to show it's 15% above what MSBA recommends, and, depending on design features, it gets us in the ballpark.
So you're saying tear it down and just build that area?
I wouldn't say, I'm just saying, in that area, there's the square footage, because we're landlocked, so it's very difficult to grow forward, to grow backwards. The auditorium and the gym really prohibit us from growing out to the right, and then the science building is in decent shape and, doesn't prohibit us, but it's an area that I think a renovation may work. So I'm just looking at that center area of, if we did renovate the first floor, tear down the first floor, or add a second floor.
And that was
Where
from
would you grow the kids?
2002?
It wouldn't happen. I mean, there's no place to put the kids.
Right, that would be definitely a hurdle we'd have to.
Is there a difference between the green and the blue?
I don't have that answer, I wish I did. What's
Is
that?
there a difference between the
No.
green and the blue?
No, it was just my thought process.
Okay.
The green area, the blue area, I was looking more of like gyms and cafeteria and common spaces. Where the green, I looked at more classroom.
Are you making a statement here that the supporting walls and all the load-bearing walls within this colored area,
Mhm.
are you making a statement that all those load-bearing walls could support a second story?
Absolutely not. No,
Okay,
I don't
you're
believe
just
it.
saying that that space is big enough that if you were to put a two-story structure there, it would more than satisfy our
Correct.
space requirements.
And how that's designed, whether, I don't think you could simply say, no, you simply couldn't put beams above and throw a second floor on. It
Okay.
wasn't designed for that.
So in your opinion, do the load-bearing walls prohibit any second-story additions?
As they currently stand,
Yes.
I would say, in my opinion, again, I haven't done an engineering study on it,
Okay.
but yeah, I don't think.
You'd be surprised if
I'd
they
be
could.
very surprised if we
Okay.
could simply throw a second floor on there.
Okay.
I put
Be
that
sure.
question to the architect that worked on the center school building, and he said, well, when they did, and they also did the science wing study, he said, well, they didn't check for that. He said in his experience, a 1961 built building would not, he has not found a 1961 building that he's worked on
No,
that would
okay.
fit.
It would meet the
It
structural
would meet the
size and
structural
all
size.
kinds of stuff. It's kind of a newly renovated area. You'd have to meet new codes and just no chance of that
I don't see it.
happening.
And that whole colored area is inside the
Correct.
Zone 1 well protection?
Yeah, most of it is, yes.
Okay.
We may clip a little corner over here that's not, but for the most part.
But basically it is, okay.
So that's all
I think it's that
1960
type of-
building vintage, that whole area? I wasn't sure kind of where
I
the
would guess that it's all 1961. I think some of this pop out here is the brand new.
Right, that's the new
area.
office that
Yeah,
was
the
done
new
in
office,
2002.
But everything else is the existing building. And am I reading this right, that this means that this would no longer be here?
No, that's just stays.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
By stays, you just mean structurally stays
Stays the way it is and then maybe a renovation
No-
inside.
No
within.
changes.
Yeah, I think the building, it's a two-story building. It, is, I think it was a 1970s addition, I believe, so it,
I can't nail it down, but I'm guessing somewhere between 70 and 80.
so, and I think that building, it's a brick structure, it's,
So
it's.
structurally, you're saying, just not like, because those are the science lab, which we
Right, I
spent
think
a lot
it-
of time talking
I
about.
mean, I think we
needs
talked
for
that it would
but
need
I just
some
wanna
sort of
make sure that's
renovation, and
clear,
again,
yeah.
that falls into the,
Right.
where do you go?
Those are our biggest science labs.
Yes, yeah.
This building has the 5 labs
Right.
down here in this section, and they are the ones that meet closest to the 1240.
So this drawing, is your, kind of best attempt of saying like where could possibly something occur, because there's not a lot of good other locations to expand left, right, back, front, kind of like your
Correct. Exactly.
landlocked
It's-
kind of.
If we work and think about what we have and where we are, without doing any substantial work on the auditorium, because that would be, I think would be, it's newer, and trying to maintain the structure that's currently the science lab, the area I saw that was available for some sort of option would be the area between those. And they said, well, okay, if we know we need X amount of square feet, which the number that's been thrown to us is 270,000 square feet, meets this MSBA recommendation. So I said, if we took that area, if we took this area and we did a 2-story structure and we were 230,000 square feet, I'd want to come to
Just
you
that
and
structure.
say, this may not work on the footprint we have. But with this, it gives us that 15% over MSBA and,
But it has phasing issues, like how do
Oh,
you
yeah,
build
yeah,
this
yeah.
while you're.
honestly, I haven't even
Yeah.
crossed that bridge.
Yeah.
No, but it's an important idea to point out to the committee.
Right, I just want to make sure that we
Yeah.
have options in our head that, we have the new school option, the renovation option, or
No,
maybe a hybrid.
I had no sense that, the first floor is basically half of what we'd want altogether, so, okay.
So, let me get this straight. So you're saying this whole green area would, 2 stories, would give us 232,000 square feet?
would give us 320,000 square
320.
feet.
The green and
But
blue.
that's
again.
just the
Green and
green,
blue.
the green and blue. So, and then you have to add in the science labs, and then you have to add in the
That's-
auditorium and all that stuff.
that's including
And
the-
now we're way over anything.
That's
the
including.
MSBA 's
No, that's
doing.
including.
You're saying that's including
Two
the science
stories?
labs?
Correct. This area here, 2 stories plus everything else, gives us 320,000 square feet
That doesn't
of
sound right.
estimated square footage. Currently, we have 188,000, or about 190,000 square feet in the building as it sits.
Yeah.
So adding a second floor, plus filling in some of the areas below.
And this 232 is based on the current MSBA recommendations for a new building.
272 is the
272.
current, based on our, and that was off those sheets we discussed
Yeah,
a few meetings ago that has all the
But basically,
But that's-
calculations.
it basically assumes new construction, so, yeah.
That assumed new construction, right? That was MSBA's
Does the MSBA, excuse me, coming into this process with, but does that deal with current enrollment numbers or future projected, 272?
that 272 number was
Based on our
current-
existing.
our existing
yeah.
enrollment,
Yeah.
because that's what they looked
So,
at.
so if you were to go back to MSBA and say, we might have a 30% increase over the next 20 years, then they would up that number.
Yeah, conceivably, yeah,
No, they won't.
if they agree.
Yeah, if they agree with it.
Yeah.
The MSBA takes a dim view on growth.
They don't want to project. So you're saying that we need 82,000 square feet to meet the MSBA recommendations for a new building? Because there's a total difference between what we have, which is existing, which is perfectly fine, because we built to code when it was built, and based on recommendations, versus new.
Yes, well, the MSBA calculation that we ran told us 272 is the
Yeah, to
magic
be
number.
clear,
If
that's
we
a code national
ran,
number.
I know that, but if we ran by the MSBA regulations every year, it would be renovating every year.
Oh, right. This
So
is just
our building
today's
today
number.
is fine, right?
Yeah.
So we don't need 82,000 feet only if we build new, only if we go to this
And if we want to
renovation.
build to MSBA, today's MSBA
You can't-
standards.
You can't do that, because,
You got to benchmark to something.
Well, that's
You
what I was
say,
saying.
you
It's just a
define-
milestone.
and I get that,
Yeah.
but, I mean, now you're starting off saying that that building was 82,000 square feet too small, and it's not. It's just if we were to build today, per MSBA regulations, because right now, the building's to code, we built to code, we built to the recommendations
Absolutely,
as they
yes.
stood when we built.
Right.
Right.
So, I just want to be
Right.
sure.
If we were gonna rebuild the same school today, it'd be 82,000 square feet bigger or
Larger.
something like that.
Correct.
That doesn't mean we
maybe-
have to.
No.
But that's what I was gonna say, and maybe what we decide here is, a smaller renovation, and there's some areas that we could bump out, and we don't need that full 88,000 square feet. But what I wanted to do was just say, here's a real back of the envelope calculation of
The
what we have for
maximum
square
potential.
footage, and what the maximum potential is. This would be, architects,
That's-
designers
that's-
would have to dive in a little deeper than
It's a good thought
I could,
experiment.
so. It's more just a,
It's a
back of
logistics
the
nightmare.
envelope.
Yeah, but it's,
What's the ground like? Is this shale ledge? What do we have here?
I haven't had any issues with the ground, I mean.
Okay, we've been able to dig or.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty
Okay.
standard for the area. I mean, I haven't had
I
any,
never asked before.
yeah,
Just dawned on me.
I've never done any, geotechnical type
Yeah,
exploration up there, but it's,
you've got a gravel pit, a huge gravel pit
Yeah.
across the street from you.
that's
Right.
true, yeah,
Whereas if you go up to Von Hill, the ledge is sticking out of people's front yard.
yeah.
And so within a quarter mile in either direction, you're going through a dramatic geologic change.
Yeah,
Right? Where stuff was carved out and sand deposited to hundreds of feet, and fortunately, the school's sitting on that sandy part.
yeah. Good.
so we're on the next page there, which is exterior. This is just some, our site is landlocked, we have what we have. So I looked at, parking and any way that we could potentially expand and get some more growth. And some of the areas I see as the potential is basically the front yard of the school. And so I looked at, you could see existing where the parking is, and then maybe bringing the entrance to the center of the building, try to get a little better traffic flow, and expanding the parking to the right and left. One of the issues there would be that the area to the left of the entryway that I drew is the current leaching field expansion, so we'd have to engineer another spot, which may be out back on one of the, you know, playing fields or,
The area to the left, this area or this area? There's two-
right here.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, this is the, looking at maybe a new entrance, ascended
So
off
the teacher
117.
parking lot. Okay. Is that
Right.
the teacher parking lot?
Currently, no. You can see the teacher's parking lot. It's the dashed line in
Yeah.
the middle.
Yeah.
That's the teacher's parking
Yeah,
lot.
that's what I thought, okay.
So currently, I was looking through that shaded in area saying, you know, that's some potential. It's a flat, level, even surface that we might be able to expand parking into to grow. But one of the areas, one of the challenges would be the relocation of our future leaching field. If we ever need it.
Oh.
So the gray shaded area is a hypothetical way of increasing the parking, basically
Correct.
running it right almost up to the street.
Correct. We're gonna
Is
bring
just,
it-
for example, how to handle increased population, okay.
Right.
Here's a hypothetical way to cope.
Right, and that's all this is. I just wanted to
Yep.
throw some information out there to give us a few talking points.
Well, from your perspective.
That's the old tennis court.
And
And
Bill,
you're proposing that as
what
part?
what does it take to create a new leach field? Just running pipes?
Well, to build a new leach field
Yeah.
is substantial. You know, we'd have to dig down, you have to put the proper
Excavation,
material. It's a lot of
gravel,
excavation work.
yeah.
We'd have to run the lines from the wastewater treatment plant over, and then it's a series of pipes that go out for the distribution system.
So
This,
where physically on this layout would a new area go?
probably out behind in the sports fields.
Okay.
My thought would be behind student parking into that area, maybe under one of the sports fields. And that wouldn't be the leaching field, because we currently have one
Right,
that
right.
works
It'd
and
be
it's in good
backup.
shape.
Yeah.
We need a backup in
Yeah.
case we ever do have a major
Sure.
failure.
Now, I'm getting far afield here, no pun intended, but if you were to use those playing fields, would you be able to do it at the current grade, or would you just, you know, one thing you could do is just put down the leach field and cover it with sand, and then put the baseball field on top of that? Is that what you're proposing, or using the playing fields at the existing grade?
I'd have to have an engineer, you know,
Okay.
someone who's got more knowledge than me
Okay.
as far as, you know, septic system design. But the idea would be someone would have to come in and identify an area for us. It's
Okay.
whether they'd have to bring the grade up or do some sort of soil management.
But
Yep.
if that's only your overflow, your reserve, you wouldn't have to do anything immediately.
It would just be-
there in case you need.
Right, just like this area, there's nothing here, this is just identified, and, you know, we wouldn't want to put a parking lot over it, because if there was ever the need, we'd have to rip everything out.
I'm confused. I thought earlier you said that you had a backup leaching field. Oh, is
That's
this
it.
covering it?
We do,
This is the current right now, but if you convert that to parking,
That's the current.
no, this is the current.
Okay, and that's the backup.
This is all
This is the
grass now.
backup, but if
Yep.
you convert that to parking, you're gonna have to move the backup over here.
Okay.
You don't have to physically build anything, you need to
Right.
show that it's
Yes.
That's
feasible to kind of connect there, but
Yeah.
And you reserve it, you don't do anything else with
Right.
it. Lock it up.
That's the water tank for the porous.
Couldn't we just build a garage?
It goes down into a water distribution tank, and
And then we
then.
just worry about
Building over the
that.
garage, with the high
So
school
that's
garage,
You know that would work?
right in front.
Yeah. No, right on the side.
Just put a Dunkin' Donuts on the bottom and have that pay for it.
Or if you make that a drive-through, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, he's got a great idea. On this, to the left of the building here,
Yes.
make that a parking garage, and then just have the school extend onto the top of the parking garage.
We could use the parking.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, then have a Dunkin' Donuts there.
And then it's self, and it's
If a drive-through, and it
self-contained.
would-
Starbucks.
And it would pay for everything, yeah.
And it's self-contained. It's not gonna mess up with your systems. So you, on this drawing, is your new parking going in the tennis court area also?
I just, again, just identified potential areas where
Potential.
we could, you know, and nothing's chiseled in stone. I just wanted to throw some ideas out for conversation with the group.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't have a parking garage?
They're expensive.
Cost.
Well, we have no land.
If you can get your students to pay $500 a year, you could probably pay for it over 20 years.
You know, it gets,
You know?
you know, they get used to paying, because when they start working in town, it's gonna
Right.
cost them that much a month.
Yeah.
Unless they're
So take the bus.
So then the last page is just simply a satellite view, so you can, just so you have that. See, where some of the unutilized spaces, you can see that area that I identified. In the middle, there's a few courtyards or some areas between where the wood shop is that's open and, underutilized. So those are some areas, that may have some potential, whether it's not a full scope renovation or full scope addition, but maybe there's some areas that we can identify.
Where on this are you talking about putting the portable classroom?
Right now, the area if you look at the science lab and the section with the asphalt roof to the left of the white roof, in this back area,
Right jog and-
that little jog right there between the science lab and where the math classrooms are. That's a fairly level area that
And it's
fits.
about the right square footage?
It's the right square footage, and there's an exterior door there that we could tie into, so it minimizes the need to cut openings into the building, to really work on the grades, because and the area fits.
Is that in the paved area, or is that kind of?
No, in that
the
little grass
courtyard?
area
Yeah,
there.
okay.
It would almost kind of nestle right into that, in the building,
Lengthwise.
lengthwise, correct.
And so you were looking at that, is that a number of portables, one big
One two-section portable, which sits about 28 feet by 50-something feet, 57 feet.
each section?
Together.
Together.
Each section is about 14 feet or so,
Okay,
so it can
right,
ship
right,
over the
right.
roads
Yep,
by
yep,
about
yep.
50-something long.
Each classroom is 900 square feet, and I believe they have a, I'm trying to remember, a closet
There's a,
section.
yeah, there's like a main vestibule for
Portico.
entry.
Yeah,
So it's about 2,000 square feet
yeah,
approximately?
yeah. They're very nice.
I remember some of the teachers down in Pompo, they were all fighting to get it.
Oh, absolutely. Give me walls. Give me walls.
Maybe some sort of little connector or something into the building?
The idea is to have a connector coming from the doors to,
Pedestrian walkway, whatever.
right, keep people out of rain as well as
Yeah.
security, make sure that we've
At
been talking
Pompo,
about
they
things.
were, you didn't even know you were leaving the existing building.
Yeah.
So,
If we're talking
quite the same.
about that, and
Something in that similar
and looking
fashion.
at this, the other jog over here, would that be a potential for another one?
No, because
Would it fit?
the grade, there's a substantial grade that drops down. I think the grade changes there about 10 or 15 feet, pretty substantially, so.
How many rooms are in that portable?
No.
If
We stayed
or
in
like-
two.
Two.
This is actually a hill going down.
The only other locations that would work for a portable, to have a connection to the building would be, if code would allow it, would be essentially behind the auditorium here, taking up this space.
Was the only problem there, that would limit
We'd have
access
to-
for.
Yeah, we'd have to make sure we can get a car lane around there.
Correct.
Or the student parking, to be able to get in one of the main doors, which again,
Now it starts taking away
see
student
fire
parking.
exit and parking.
And parking, which
Yeah.
is
Your parking, you can't expand parking west this way?
not with some work, because this is actually a retention pond,
Okay.
so that drops down into a retention pond there. And to go to the right between this lot and the tennis court, the old tennis court is a slope that goes up, probably 20 feet or so.
But one of the proposals was to put in additional parking where the tennis courts are.
Correct.
Come in from Green Road, which is not a popular thing in Bolton, I understand.
Right.
I drove by those orange stakes the other day. They look like they're about about 2 smooths apart.
That's just for no parking signs.
Yeah.
There are no parking signs. Have you acted on those? Is that not you, I mean, as the town of Bolton? As I recall, recently there was to be a meeting of the Board of Selectmen where they were going to consider the parking restrictions on Green Road.
I don't remember seeing that on a recent selectmen's agenda, so I'm not sure where that stands. The agenda just came out a couple of days ago, and that wasn't on there, so. But I think they put the stakes in there to get a feel for
How
you know,
obnoxious they
how,
would be.
how it would look, yeah. Yeah,
Parking.
Yeah,
yeah.
they're about 10 feet apart. Those
Yeah,
steps.
they're gonna, I think I heard that they're gonna, they were zealous, and I think they're gonna back off distance.
It makes it easier to park between them.
Huh?
It makes it easier to park
Right.
between them.
I know, everybody wants what they want, and they don't want what they want, but then they want.
Can you put that in a minute?
Well, there is a point there that when it's on both when there's parking on both sides of that road, an emergency vehicle cannot get down.
And that's been the concern that the chief
Yeah.
expressed as well as the
Bill,
chiefs.
That's right.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the air distribution, air handling issues, for example, we talked about in the gymnasium, and some of the design concerns that we have,
Sure.
and that at some point might be an expense that we look to do as part of our capital plan?
So one of the areas we struggle with is the locker rooms. They're stale, we don't have a very good air exchange down there, and what we've found through exploring is that the air that feeds the locker rooms actually comes from the gymnasium. So rather than having a separate independent outside airflow that comes into the locker rooms, we're pulling the already used air from the gymnasium and pushing it down into the locker rooms. It makes it very difficult to manage the space down there. And you can imagine, you throw a couple hundred kids in both boys and girls sides.
Part of the chalk experience, come on.
So that's an area of concern that I think we do need to explore, and that may be something that this reverse type commissioning, or having an engineer come in and take a look at the air distribution system in that area. Unfortunately, that is part of the newer addition, but it was just designed maybe incorrectly, with little thought as to what's actually going on down in that lower level.
Right.
So that's a problem. Some of the other areas we've had is throughout the buildings, the air, we do have air that distributes throughout the ceilings, through the registers. We've found a lot of areas that the systems weren't even hooked up. The belts were cut, the motors were removed, or the ductwork wasn't connected. So it's really been an ongoing process over the past, few years. And, we've hired some new staff and we've done some in-house training to really bring them up on the HVAC side, as well as, bring plumbers in and an electrician, and they're both cross-trained to HVAC. So they've really started crawling up and in and around the ceilings and found some issues that are concerning. So just, units that you would think you're running heat, as far as we look at when we turn on our systems, and we could see this online and tell what's going on, but then we go into a room and say, this room should be cool. This is crazy. We're running, 62-degree air to the room. So we start tracing the ductwork back. We pop ceiling tiles and find that a booster fan or a distribution fan is running, but the ductwork isn't hooked up. So it's just blowing into the ceiling. It was never finished. So we'd make the connection, and then that would start balancing the rooms out. And so that's an area where talking about the reverse commissioning, I think would be beneficial for the building, especially, in a long-term type situation.
What do you mean reverse commissioning?
Well, that would be an engineering firm coming in and actually looking at the mechanical systems of the building,
Okay.
and going through and telling us what we have, what the balance is in every room, how much airflow is coming out of a particular
Yeah.
diffuser in a room, and
Okay.
The actual term that they use it's retro commissioning.
Thank you,
basically
retro
kind of
commissioning.
So it's commissioning existing buildings that have never
Thank
really
you, that's
been
the term I
commissioned
had wrong.
before.
Right, and I don't think we ever had an initial commissioning of this building, at least I hope not, because of some of the things we found that we've repaired
Should
over
be
the past
fired,
few
yeah.
years, right?
No, we never finished. They threw them out, they didn't finish.
All right.
So that's what I have there. Just-
Thank you, that's
All right,
really
that's good.
helpful
Very good.
Thank you.
to hear all that.
Thank you, Bill.
Actually, Bill, can you go back to the building management system?
Yes,
So you said it's gonna be upgraded soon? So are you looking to upgrade the system that's existing, or are you looking at a new system?
upgrade the system that's existing, and it's really simply a software upgrade. that brings us up to the next
How
platform.
much is that?
About $7,000. You know, so it's not cheap, but it gives us a lot more abilities to control. And, you know, with all the, I'm not a strong IT guy, but with all the changes in Windows and the upgrades and the versions that we have to do it, it's part of.
So is that a flat fee, or is that just to buy it and somebody is going to come and tweak it?
That's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
They install the system, then part of that we use automated logic, and they come in and they do any tweaking we need. And I also send myself, as well as my 2 HVAC technicians that we have, we go to training periodically and run the system, so we can do a lot of it in-house.
So do you actually use this to control the buildings, or do you use this just to monitor?
Absolutely, we control the buildings off this. You know, I could, from my house, actually get an alarm in the middle of the night, which I do quite often, and go in, log into the system and see that a boiler's not working, and I can reset the boiler, or from there, you know, I get alerts on my phone from it that tells me, both myself as well as the other
You can
maintenance
reset it
staff.
from home?
What's that?
Can you reset it
I
from
can.
home?
Yeah, I can reset them at home. I can adjust temperatures. And what really is great about it, which I think is where the energy savings come in, is we can do nighttime setbacks. So instead of having someone physically have to turn the thermostats down, the system actually controls based on outside air temperature and time when the boilers go off. And then at night, I reduce the temperature of the building down to like 60 or 62 degrees. Then in the morning, we start slowly ramping up different sections of different buildings too.
So what exactly are you monitoring? Are you monitoring outside air?
We monitor outside air, I monitor.
I mean, actually, not just what the temperature is outside, but the amount of outside air coming into this.
Oh,
the fresh
absolutely,
air
yes.
turnover.
I can actually pass this around. This shows one of the many air handling units we have, and you can see it actually tells us the temperatures of outside airs coming in, the volumes of that coming in, how much return air we're bringing, the speed of the fans, if we have VFDs on it, what's going on with that. I can check
So with all this control, how come you couldn't read that there were ductworks not connected?
well, because these units are saying, I'm running, and I'm putting out the amount of air I'm supposed to be doing. The problem is then it distributes to the room, and then the next step in that flow is the thermostat in the room. And I'd look and say, well, this system is telling me it's delivering 68 degree or 70 degree air. Why is this room freezing cold? So we go, or really hot, and we go in and look and say, we check the duct and say, well, we don't have airflow. So then we started backtracking and found areas where.
The sensors aren't everywhere in the building, in every room, they're
Right.
at certain locations.
In certain
and
locations.
So it
Usually
looks
it's
fine, but if something's disconnected down
They're not in the
there,
in the middle,
you don't
right?
know.
So we have the unit, and then we have the room, and then we have a disconnect somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
And
so,
that's
so what you're getting is you're getting 2 readings that aren't consistent with each other.
correct.
And you go, and that makes you go into the room and look to try to reconcile them.
Right.
Why don't they agree?
Why don't they agree? And another great thing about the system is, you know, we can track changes, we work on it, we make sure that we're changing filters out, we can tell pressures in the systems to tell when it's time to change out filters, to change out motors. So it's, and it gives us that control to make sure that we're running efficient.
So the system that we have right now is working,
Yes,
the building management system.
the building management system's working, we have air to the rooms, we watch it, we have a comfortable, we have our blips here and there, but for the most part, we have, you know, a comfortable level throughout all the rooms, we have proper airflow in the rooms.
So how important is the upgrade
The upgrade of this system,
of the building management
very,
system?
because without it, I can't monitor it. My screen goes blank. Because the software no longer is.
Microsoft is no longer supporting some of their older operating systems. And if you're on one of those older operating
Right.
systems, you're toast if you don't spend. the
And now,
same.
I'm
And
still
for a
working
building
with.
that big, $7,000 is small.
Well, this is for every building in the district. This is our platform that runs the
Yeah,
buildings from
that's-
Stowe to Lancaster. They're all networked on the same one, so when I pull up that screen, I see every building, and I can click on a building, drill down, click on a room,
Yeah.
drill down, click on a boiler, and I can go right down, so it's, and then that same system is what watches all the temperatures in the rooms and pressures and volumes, and sends us alerts when we need it, so.
So is there a deadline for when it's no longer supported?
No, we can start seeing areas that, you know, you try to click on something and you can't get in.
Okay.
So it's time, it's something that, I mean, I'm still working with them to try to negotiate a better price, because we are good-sized entity to them, so.
Mary, you're in the high school every day. How's the ambient temperature and,
It varies.
yeah,
You know, I find that you can walk through the building and there are areas like the hallways that, where the glass are, where you connect between where the academic support center used to be, and as you walk over the library, it's freezing cold.
Right.
You know?
That's all the single pane glass
Exactly.
and.
Yeah.
So, you know, as you're trying to make the building efficient, but at the same time, there are pockets that it's, you know, we dress in layers. So, you know, have coats on in one room and in another room, you know, you're in regular clothing, so it's
Right.
a little tricky. So,
you know, I mean, are there any classrooms left with single pane glass?
What now?
No.
I know the back of the media
Well-
center, the library where all the glass is
Yeah,
quite cold too.
That glass, I believe that's double pane glass. We may have the wood shop. Could be an area where we
But
have
it's
some
still
single pane glass.
aluminum, like a lot.
It's still
It's
aluminum
free.
frames, and it does get cold. You put your hand
Yeah.
against
It's
it.
really cold.
Yeah,
You put your hand against even that double pane glass we have,
yeah,
it's cold.
yeah.
Pains the
Insulation was not, part,
Right, we had the
Wasn't
issue,
done well.
we had the issue last year that we had a pipe
Pipe
freeze.
freeze.
And when we explored it, was run inside the outside wall, but there's no insulation, it's just a block wall, and they ran a water line up the outside of the wall. And in the middle of the night, we had a pipe
Remember that
burst.
bursting? That's in the food and science
Food
area?
and science area, right, so now we've cut that out and we re-ran that pipe inside the building,
Right.
so it's, we shouldn't have that problem again. But that's part of what I think is great about the control system and that management side is, the hope is that I get an alarm when something hits 60 degrees rather than when it hits 30 degrees and we have a problem.
But at the end of the day, no matter the controls or you get an update, you still have issues with building envelope, single pane glass,
Right.
lack of insulation.
The distance
like,
of runs from
yeah, all that
boilers
stuff. I mean,
and-
all that stuff still exists.
Right,
You know,
and then
even if the controls are working really
Right.
well,
Right.
there's still the inefficiencies in the overall building configuration and.
You know, the balance and
Yeah.
things like that, you know, it's, yes.
any other questions for Bill, maybe for research for a future meeting, or?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to follow up on a comment made earlier, just to add a perspective in terms of there being enough space in the high school. I mean, we've spent many, many sessions talking about that, but I just wanted to bring up that while space seems sufficient because things work, we're talking about working at a space usage efficiency that's much higher than is recommended. So I just didn't want people to leave with the impression that everyone feels that the space is adequately sized, and maybe no one does, but.
So there's two issues, there's, it's adequately sized and we have
Used.
enough,
Right,
right?
right.
Okay.
And from what Bill said, to start this, I think you feel that a lot has been done to try to make sure that what we have is used as appropriately as possible.
Right, we've done a lot of, and usually the summer becomes the room shuffle where, you know, I sit with Parry and, you know, whoever else is available that wants to talk, and we say, all right, this room can go here, this room can go here, can we move this room, this group to a smaller room and use this room for something else? So we do a lot of room moves over the summer, and last year we split the art room in half, you know, so.
Right.
we-
Which has had other impacts.
Which has had
but
other
serves
impacts.
the need at least of doubling the number of
Right.
spaces.
Do you think you have a measure of what percentage of your outside walls are poorly or not insulated, similarly to a measure of the amount of single pane glass there is in the high school? Or is that something you could, you know, maybe?
Yeah, I could take a look at that. I'd have to, the glass one, I'd have to really dive into and take a look. And the insulation, from what I've seen, the entire left side of the building is not insulated on the exterior walls. I'd have to look at the prints to see the 2000 construction, what kind of, and I'll look at that for you. I'll pull what we have for as-built on that and get you an answer.
Well, it might be good to have a, I know that as far as the roof placement, roof replacement, and insulation, you haven't worked it into the plan because you're waiting to see what this group's gonna do?
Yes, in a way, yes, because, you know, I mean, it's an expensive venture to say, you know, next year, do we want to put another $200,000 into replacing a roof or a set of windows?
But it might be helpful to know what areas are in need and it might affect, what's going on further.
Sure, I have
So,
a multi-year plan. I
Yeah.
can present, I can bring that in and, I can fine tune it a little bit and talk, maybe spread it out over, a thought of 10 years
Yep.
and see where we look.
You have a 5-year plan, I think, in the 2015 budget. Do you think that fairly describes some of the things that you anticipate are desirable to really
Yes.
get done?
I think over the next 5
And probably
years.
there's another 5 years worth of stuff that you're thinking about, but haven't really put down on a budget type of spreadsheet. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And I could, try to project out 10 years and see some of the areas that I think might be, cause for concern or something we want to start thinking about it. I agree, maybe that could give us a little food for thought.
All right, any other final thoughts for Bill? We have, what did I say this meeting was, I did say 8:30. Let's have a check-in, do we wanna go longer?
Do we need to?
Well, the other big item, I sent around an email, I do not have the enrollment projections, our outside group that's doing that isn't quite done with those. We kind of talked about the modulars, the school committee is gonna talk about those on the 28th. The only thing is the, sort of the interim report, which Bob was kind enough to do sort of a draft, brief one. So if people want to talk about that as sort of just to, at the 50,000 foot view, tell people what we've done so far, that might be
Just
worth
kind of a
5 or 10 minutes.
procedural question is, I happened to print this in yellow because my daughter was doing a project last night and got the yellow paper in the printer, but it certainly stands out. Is this your? This
It says draft version
1217?
Yes.
This is yours?
Yes.
Okay. Then, but we also, I come back, like Johnny One Note. Last time I suggested, we had the large, hang on, well, back in November 20th,
Yep.
actually, that we had a lot of discussion about. And that would have no draft number on it. I labeled.
It's draft 5.
But that was draft 5.
Mhm.
1120. Then there's another document which still says draft 5. That was a cleaned up version of this.
Right.
But I got no life. I sat down and I went through paragraph by paragraph looking at them. And it isn't the same draft 5 as the old draft 5. I mean, obviously, the one glaring difference is recommendation. Task force recommends following blank.
Right.
Where before it was, let's go file with MSBA.
Right.
But there are a number of other changes, which it makes it very difficult to compare the old draft 5 with it. I suggest this one should have been draft 6, and I can point out where the changes are if anybody wants. But this is an expanded version of what you had.
I prefer to think of mine as a condensed version of what he had. His came first. Michael's came first.
Okay,
Let's be clear about that.
Chickens and eggs. But
I think that'd be more accurate.
my point is, these two documents, 1120 and the one that has no date on it, that's another pet peeve of mine. This one should be draft 6, because in addition to the deletion of the recommendations, as I said, I got no life. You added 236 words on 5 different pages in this one from the other one, and deleted 110 words from this one. So, and I've got them highlighted and so when it comes back to that, to the extent that you were referring to this document in a
Okay.
condensed version, which one are you talking about?
I think this is the condensed version.
This is the condensed version.
This one. This little bit.
I don't specifically refer to that larger document at all.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
So, but the,
So the question on the floor, though, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, is do we want to continue to talk about the condensed version?
I think we should get this out and
Okay.
get it
Is it
done.
page one?
yes.
2 pages, yes.
I do have a question though. Is it really accurate to say most students are not offered a full day of
I wouldn't- What are we referring to?
Okay.
On the
this-
condensed one, point number one, most students are not offered a full day of instruction due to lack of classrooms and laboratory facilities. Is that really fair and accurate, or is it more accurate to say that they are not necessarily offered the exact program that they desired? So that they do get a full,
coordinator.
Although
they
I'm
do
not
get a full.
totally in tune to the
Well,
scheduling.
right, but do they get a full day of instruction, but maybe just not exactly what they desired as a, because not getting a full day of instruction implies that there's kids sitting around for like 3 or 4 class periods doing study hall.
There are students
Well,
in study,
where-
there are students scheduled into study hall. I don't know
I'm
if
not
it's a
sa- I'm-
significant number though.
Well,
Is that a
yes, but
choice?
I mean, my kids have had a study hall per day,
Right.
or, you know, maybe even, you know, one semester had 2 every other day or
Yeah.
something, but
And it's not like half the day that they're
right,
sitting there.
not
inside
getting a
classes.
full day of instruction implies that they're not getting their
Their
5
needs met.
cores and gym and
Well,
whatever.
okay. First off, point 1 ties to next step A. So point 1 says, most students are not offered a full day of instruction due to lack of classrooms and laboratory facilities. And step A is, understand the consequences of less than a full day, and if there are adverse consequences, what are they needed, and so on. So there's, and I'll get back to your specific question in a moment, but just realize that the way this is positioned is, most students are not getting a full day of instruction. Is this consequential? That's what step A, that's what follow-up step A is. Is this consequential? Now, where number point 1 came from is, it's mentioned twice. It's mentioned once in the NAS, the NEAS
Right.
report, that students should be, that there's some state agency that, and I don't know enough about this to know if it dictates or if it recommends that students get 990 hours of instruction. And
Well,
What-
I guess my question is it fair and accurate to say that there's a significant number who are being significantly shortchanged of that 900 some odd minutes of instruction? Or are they receiving their 900 minutes of instruction, but perhaps not exactly how they would have desired it? Or are they falling slightly short or a lot short? And I think that
my
makes-
understanding
That's a
is
worthy
that
question.
the students we're talking about are in study halls. So it's not a question of preferred instruction or not.
Right,
It's
but my
no-
question
it's
is-
it's no instruction.
But my question is it fair and accurate to say that a lot of them are spending a lot of time in study hall? I mean, when I read that, I feel like, oh, well, you can, there's a significant number of kids who are sitting in study hall 3 or more periods a day.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's one of the numbers that I remember, and it's in the report, talks about there's an average of maybe 100 students per period
Right.
that are in study hall. So even if everyone's just in one study hall.
Right,
you know,
but I personally don't have an issue with a kid having
No,
a study hall per day.
Okay,
But
but-
I would say that being in class 6 out of 7 periods would constitute a full day of instruction.
Okay, but there's a difference between being in study hall and because you could be in a study hall in a classroom, and theoretically that classroom could be used, could put a teacher in there and could be used for a class. My understanding of what's in the NEAS report and what's also in Michael's draft of the interim report, it says that there are 100 students per period that are in study hall because there are no classrooms to put them in. And they are in the cafeteria, and they are literally in the hallways because of that. And where I get to saying most students is because if you take 100 students per period times 7 periods, that's 700 students per day, which is 2/3 of the population of the school. And it's fair to challenge that, but that's what I got out of the NEAS report and Michael's draft of the interim report. Is not just, there's nothing here that says every student in a study hall is being deprived of their full instruction. It's that there are 100 students per period who don't have the opportunity to have a teacher because there is a lack of classroom space.
The math's a little off, because when you're comparing 7 periods, and you're comparing it to the whole, if we've got 1,087 kids in the class, all right, in first period, and 100 of those kids are in study hall, you can't add up all of the periods, 700, and compare it still to just 1,087. You'd have to multiply the 1,087 by 7 periods. So your math is a little bit off.
Well, I think you're, if I can offer a suggestion, I think if we use the specifics, we could say 100 students, or approximately 100 students per period, have to have a study hall due to a lack of classrooms, laboratory facilities, and instructors.
But I
Doesn't
would,
it-
is that the, I mean, that may be most of it, is that the only reason they're scheduled there, or is it also, is it only
Well-
because there's nowhere to put them, that they're put in study?
It's either there's
probably
nowhere to
something
put
like
them, or by choice, they're choosing not to go where we could put them, because there's no other option for them to choose
So
from.
there wasn't something better for them at that time, according to
Correct.
them.
Correct.
But doesn't that, it also kind of gets down to, like, people look at that and kind of say, well, what is a full day of instruction? Like, to someone might look at it and go, well, if they only have one study hall, that sounds like a full day of instruction, versus, that is the comparison of the 990 hours,
Right.
which I don't recall what
So
organization has that requirement,
that's the
but
Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, that's a regulation that we have to follow. And actually, technically, I just happened to do this today for some other work that we're trying to look at, not related to the high school specifically. But actually, in order to get 990, you have to take 7 periods of instruction.
so maybe, like, for example, that number one, if we tie it to like a specific 100 students per period, and that they're not
Yeah.
meeting the 990 of that requirement,
Right.
it kind of takes out the
Ambiguity.
the vagueness of
Yeah.
someone saying, well, what do you mean they don't get full day instruction?
Right.
It's tied to something specific.
And why isn't guidance informing them that they don't have enough credits?
So that's a different issue. They're actually able to earn their credits taking less courses. So that's a different issue. Because we
Is
offer,
it separate
taking
for
a
high
second.
school? Is this 990 different for high school?
Well, it's 990 for high schools, 900 for elementary schools.
Because, I mean, I know some seniors that only had to take so many classes to get their credits, and so they've got lots of study. So,
I don't know what lots is defined by, but they
no,
shouldn't.
more than,
Right.
more than I would
Technically,
want.
everybody should be in a class to earn the 990. And I will say that, I think a majority of high schools across have, the DESE has tried to help school systems by saying that as long as there is a licensed teacher in the study hall, it can be considered a directed study, which gives assistance for instruction. It can be considered a course. So, I mean, it's not like we're not meeting the 990.
So
It's
that's
just,
like
part
we
of the
don't-
990.
it can be considered part of the 990. In that
Okay,
regard.
so the 990 can't be part of that sentence then.
Well, I mean, I'm not so sure. I don't know that we want it to be that way. I mean, but maybe we do. I mean, I think.
There's at least concern about how well students are served by the current setup of study hall and the facility.
Right.
Something along
Well-
those lines is an area of concern.
Do you want it, we could change step 1 to, there's a question, at this point we have these general observations. Not all students may be offered a full day of instruction due to lack of classrooms. And then we change A to say, determine if lack of space is preventing a full day of instruction, or a full
Compliment.
complement, or
Mhm.
satisfies requirements.
Right.
Was that a finding by NEASC?
No, yes,
Yes,
that's
hasn't been here
But what about the self-study? Did the self-study come back and say that we did not have a full complement of instruction?
I don't have it memorized, but I do believe there is a section in there that speaks to this issue where, the students essentially are not able to have a full class load because we don't offer either enough variety of courses or enough sections of courses so that they have something to choose from.
So that is something we fell short of, or that's something that's one of the things they look for in the self-study?
That is something our teachers wrote about that they are concerned about. I'm not sure how NEASC will respond to that.
I don't remember it being like an indicator specifically.
Yeah, it's not,
They have
But
a
it is
list
in
of
there.
criteria that they look
Yeah.
for accreditation. I don't remember it being specific.
I mean, if they walked around and saw a reference to something that you said, Lynn, that lots of kids, kids have lots of study halls, then that's gonna be a concern for them and they're gonna flag that.
I think if they do the tour and they, during the school day and they're outside our auditorium area, it varies from period to period, but to walk down there and see, there could be 30 or 40 kids sitting there, and there could be 60 up in the media center in studies. And then it makes the media center very difficult to have a study area because there's really 2 or 3 classes of kids in there that really should be in other places. So you kind of have this whole sense of why are there so many kids not in class? And why is the library so crowded? And why are there so many kids sitting in a hallway outside the auditorium? We moved in from the cafeteria area to outside of the auditorium just to have a better management of where kids were going and to contain it, if you will. But I've only taught in one other high school, and my sense is there are too many kids not scheduled in classes. And it goes back to where is the space, where is the room, and then I think we see this, during certain periods, there's only 2 free rooms in the building, so it kind of just all comes back to, we don't have the space, we don't have the room to schedule the kids, so therefore they're in the media center or in the study hall area.
So is it the electives that we don't have for them? Because they've all got their core subjects, right?
Right.
It's the electives.
So it's the electives that they're not scheduled. And not all of the elective classes are full, because if I recall, when he came in and talked, there were some classes where the numbers are really low.
I think there's room for people. I wouldn't characterize them as low, but I think there would be room for some. But again, because it's a choice for electives, if they choose not that elective, then there's no other choice, then that's what they choose study hall over that. And, to your point, there are some kids who really do need a study hall. That's legit.
They want the study hall, yeah.
Well, they need it.
They need it.
They need the downtime.
There's kids who need 2 study halls. Really?
Well, characterizing it from the other direction, if the administration and the facility and the teachers and the curriculum were gung-ho to make sure everybody were enabled to be in a classroom because the best possible sets of classrooms and curricula is available, it's not possible now for all those kids to go into any classroom.
Correct.
You need 4 new classrooms.
In the best of all possible worlds, yeah.
Yeah.
A minimum of 4,
Minimum
yeah.
4.
I guess that's one of the things we have to be careful with, because I remember having part of this discussion around everyone should be in a class in every period. But we need to be really cautious about that type of discussion.
So perhaps a way of flavoring what I was saying is that you can have varieties of study hall that are not really able to be implemented because you don't have the varieties of space to implement them. And it could be you've got a real collaborative kind of space for one group of kids, and you have a quiet area for another group of kids, and that present facility prevents you from even taking a good look at that sort of thing. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair.
So, going back to point 1, we changed the wording to, many students may not be offered a full schedule of instruction due to lack of classrooms and laboratory facilities.
Do you just want to say that, not 7 periods? Just define what the full day of instructions mean? Just
Well, then our next step is, and I would begin that with, if you go down to A, the way this document, I've got 5 points of general observations, and I've got 5 steps to follow up on all of them. Okay, so there's some symmetry there. So for point A, I would start with, determine if students are offered a full day of instruction, understand the consequences of less than a full day, and so on and so forth. So I would add another sentence at the bottom to say that at the top, we say, it's our understanding that many students are not offered a full schedule, and at the bottom, we say, we're going to determine if that's correct, and if so, what are the consequences?
Okay, I guess I would be comfortable if you clarified this to quantify that a full day is being scheduled someplace at all 7 periods per day, and that anything less than that constitutes less than a full day in this, because I guess I read this feeling that it was almost inflammatory, like you know, that you've got hundreds of kids wallowing around, lounging in the halls half the day, which I mean, it's still an issue where they are, but it's sort of painting a picture of being totally irresponsible, which I would say that having lots of kids not scheduled for half the day would be irresponsible, as opposed to not being optimal, which would be being scheduled all 7 periods, so that if kids are scheduled 5.5 or 6 periods of the day, that this is still an issue, but it's I guess it to me it conveys the issue without sort of painting ourselves as being almost inflammatory, of making it sound like they're being you know, we're not even coming close to serving their needs. I mean, it's a fine line that you need to walk between expressing that there's a genuine need without painting
So
it.
how about if I say many students are not offered a full 7-period schedule of instruction?
Yes, that would
Okay.
that would make me much happier.
Okay. So many students are not offered a full,
They
They're offered. They are not scheduled.
It's mostly elective, so it's their choice.
are not.
And if there was more space, more electives would be offered, and
Can we
But
put the
let me contest that, because
Okay.
they're in the hallways. They're in the hallways because there are no classrooms to put them in.
Right, but
That's
so we need more
different
space.
than what's
Yeah,
required, though.
but that doesn't mean they're not offered things. If they wanted to take, I don't know, basket weaving, it was there, and they say, oh, I don't like basket weaving, I'm going to opt for a study hall. The only place is in the hallway.
so if
I mean, I don't
introductory
know.
art, introductory drawing and painting can accommodate 24 students, and only 18 are taking the course, yes, we could put another 6 in there, but if you can't find 6 kids who think
want
that
it.
that drawing and painting would be close to torture, you know,
Maybe they'd rather have more time to work on their homework or a project than take art, if it's
or
not
they
a
would like to
requirement.
take a computer class.
Right. Yeah.
It seems like scheduled is probably
I think
the
it's
better
scheduled.
term, kind of.
Are not scheduled.
Because in theory, we aren't at capacity, because if you put.
Is there a problem with putting the number in there? Can we, instead of many or most, can we use the word, just say approximately 100 students are not scheduled per period? And just kind of leave it at that?
I mean, yes, and you could actually,
say
I think
10%.
without losing
It's still a lot.
the brevity
It's
and
precise.
the spirit of this, you could expand it to
Doesn't
2
sound-
sentences and say approximately 100 students per period are not scheduled any place, and the result of that is that
So approximately 100 students per period are not scheduled for instruction due to lack of classrooms and laboratory facilities.
I think it could be classrooms and staffing, because obviously you need more staff to do the, it's,
No, I understand that, but if you had the staff, would you still have a place to put these students?
No.
Okay, so it's primarily, and then down at the bottom, I would just
I don't
leave-
think you really need to change that so much. I mean,
Right, I would just leave A the way it is. Okay, so we'll change 1 to approximately 100 students per period are not scheduled for instruction due to lack of classrooms and laboratory facilities.
Can, under the A, can we just, when we say full day, can we just say 7 periods so that we
Yeah,
capture the,
Less than 7 periods, okay?
just tie in what a full day is?
Okay. Plus 7 periods per day of instruction. Okay.
And I don't know if we're walking through each of these. I know for item 5, I had a couple of,
Well, let's get to item 2
Yeah.
next.
So, I'm sorry, but, so A, so the second sentence of A, if there are adverse consequences, so should there be a sentence before that, is, okay, never mind, I reread it.
Okay.
2, number 2.
So some classrooms physically limit the ability of a teacher to teach. These are because they're hot, because they're cold, because the teacher doesn't have a room. They have to roll all their stuff in. They lose 2 minutes of teaching time at the beginning of class to set up. They lose 2 minutes of teaching time at the end of the class to gather their materials again. So that's 4 minutes out of a 45-minute period, which is basically the loss of 1 teaching day every 11 days.
But it's, and Perry said it himself, it's unreasonable to expect every teacher to have a dedicated classroom because they don't teach 7 periods, they only teach 5. And some of them only teach 4.
Okay.
So there are some classes where it makes sense to share a classroom.
Agreed, but there are, that's true in some situations, and all we're doing is making a statement here. Again, this goes back to, in this case, it would be B, how many more spaces or facilities are needed to restore those full periods of instruction. Okay? So we're not making a statement here of that every teacher has to have a classroom. We're just saying that some classrooms limit the ability of the teacher to teach. And it's because they send the students out to get their coats, they lose time in setup or something else like that, or sometimes they build science classrooms, they switch classrooms, and so the student goes, oh, okay, today's the 3rd day of the rotation, I forgot we're over in this classroom today, stuff like that.
but isn't it also kind of like the labs, that the physical orientation and space in the labs limits some of the things that they could otherwise teach?
Right.
So it's not just coming and going out of a room, there's limitations of room sizes,
Right.
configurations.
And so B, down at the bottoms, is in the next steps is our commitment to turn around and detail that. Okay? And then students are dissuaded from supplemental instruction due to lack of privacy. Again, that's something I think we've heard, that the different areas that are available for supplemental instruction of the various types. Some students just, they don't want to be seen getting help because they feel that makes them stupid. And, okay. So everybody comfortable with number 2 and B down below? Okay. Administrators and teachers lack appropriate meeting space for collaborative and professional tasks among themselves. The effect on students is unclear. And that ties into C, evaluate the effect on student outcomes of lack of meeting space for teacher collaboration, administrative tasks, and professional tasks. So in point 3, we've heard a lot of administrators and teachers can't collaborate, can't do various things to prepare for their classes. The second statement in there is the effect on the students has never been clearly explained to me. I understand that teachers and administrators and and guidance don't feel they're in the proper spaces to do their jobs, but no one's being specific about the consequences of that. And I think if you're going to go before the public and say that the first half of point 3 is something you need to address, then you need to specifically state what the effects of students are, on students are. And that would be the commitment we'd be making in step C.
I found an article that talks about with the effect that if teachers do not have enough time to collaborate, what the effects in the classrooms are. And I can give you a copy of this. It's from EdUtopia, and I'll just read you one paragraph towards the end. It says, such intensive, ongoing, and collaborative professional development is exactly what research shows to be most effective for improving both teachers' practice and student learning. Yet for most teachers, this remains a rare experience. So it does have an adverse effect on the students if the teachers don't have time to collaborate and plan together and discuss different things that are going on in education. If you'd like a copy of the article.
Bob, the other thing is, was it last week that we had the roundtable at the high school? The school committee met with a large group of folks from across the district, staff, teachers, and each one of us had our own table. And one of the things that came out of my table that I thought was really compelling and we need to follow up on is that the teachers really agreed that they felt like they did not have the time that they needed to collaborate. And when asked, they said the benefit of that was innovation, that they have all these great ideas, and when they get together, it's like any other field. You get together with your peers and the excitement, and you can, come up with some really cool programs. But they aren't able to do that, and they feel that that's one of the biggest takeaways from the lack of collaboration is innovation.
Okay.
I think that's again, I do a lot of highlights, but stuff I've read since I've been hanging out here. This is the self-study. It's 100 pages or something, 111 pages. That's a common theme throughout here in the various segments.
Yep.
It's not just the space, but I kept underlining time. And time is as important as space.
And I wonder if part of that is the timing because of what was going on last year and the year before with all of the constraints that the state put on you.
It's part of it.
So we need to be cognizant of that too, but I think the collaboration is a key thing.
Okay. So, again, point number 3 is putting forth an issue that we think the committee needs to address, and down below step C is our commitment to follow up on that and understand the extent to which that's a problem and how to remedy it.
Just format question. Would it be clearer if instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and then ABC, if you had A written in underneath 1 so that one flows into the next? As somebody picking this up and reading it, as you pointed out, you jump at the first one without saying, well, what, you are addressing some of those concerns.
Right.
I'm not saying change it.
No, it could be done either way.
Yeah.
I did it as to sort of say, to group all the general observations together, as opposed to saying, here's a general observation and here's the step, and to group the next steps. But if the group feels it's better, as you're suggesting, that's fine with me. Whatever the group wants.
Make it clearer to me, but I'm just one person saying.
You know what, maybe I should change, our next steps are to pursue the general observations above by, which would make the
Yeah, because
connection.
That makes the
right.
connection more
Yeah.
clear, yeah.
Okay. There are a limited number of spaces where inadequate heating, I'm going on to 4 now, or ventilation, reduced teaching times at various times in the course of the year. I think we need to, in the course of our duties, to come up with a list of those. And at some point, I think we'll be forced to say, these should be part of the project, these should not be part of the project. But we should at least come up with an extensive list of what all those are, and then decide later which ones to address as part of the space needs and which ones should be addressed in some different manner, perhaps as just a extended capital plan over time.
No, have we run into areas where the heating and ventilation actually reduced teaching time?
Nervous?
Yeah, that would make me very nervous, yeah. Yeah, that would be,
See, I think that's more of something that's a bit in the past, but, where rooms they've had to move kids out of rooms because they were just too cold. I think in the last 2 years, we've really tackled this, and this is less of an issue. I mean, I know it comes up a bit in the report, the ES report.
But it's still an issue.
yeah, I think maybe,
It's not your issue. Don't take it personally.
anything facilities,
I know, and I
I
would
would sleep at
too.
night over.
However, that's not the point of this.
Yeah.
Right.
And all we're doing is saying, this is an issue, we have to make this a dead cat. This is a cat, that fell off the roof. We don't know if it's dead or not. We've got to nail this down.
okay.
That made everything
I definitely think there's
at all.
HVAC issues that need to be addressed,
Yeah.
that, balancing and making sure we have proper airflow in the different rooms
And I
and
think
temperature
that's more of the
control.
issues that we need to
Right.
address and
Yeah,
continue to address.
and so, this isn't, pin the tail on the facilities guy.
Oh, no, I don't see that.
It's just to say, we've got to nail down we've got to determine if there are significant issues here, and if so, what are they?
Wonderful.
Along those lines, for 4, going back up to the observations, instead of reduced teaching time, it's more along the lines of, in various ways, impair the
Maybe
learning
impair,
activity
yeah.
Okay.
or the teaching activity. Is
Um,
that
Because that
a
would
reasonable way
encompass the
to
science lab
encompass
discussion.
Right, because I don't think we've actually,
discomfort as opposed to impaired time?
I haven't heard of anything where we actually, well, recently,
Yeah.
that we've actually said, all right, this classroom is closed, close the door, everyone out, we have a problem. But I could definitely see kids are wearing coats,
Right.
it's very hot in the
Back row, one
room.
classroom is
It's that,
cold.
it's,
Issue with
so
ventilation
isn't
in
that
the
it
science
impairs
labs.
teaching or it impairs teaching and learning? Because teaching is, we're talking about the teacher. Learning is, we're talking about the impact on the students, so.
And I know some of those
Well-
classrooms in the back are cold, even with heat running, and the kids.
Okay,
Would be cold.
and I don't mean to slight the professionals, but if you're going to target this to the general public, then I think you want to emphasize that this is impairing the learning.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right.
So, number 4, we're changing to, there are a limited number of spaces where inadequate heating and/or ventilation.
And/or
impair-
insulation. Seriously.
Yeah, but that really falls into heating and ventilation, because I can't get the heat.
Impair
All right,
learning.
people,
at
let's
ve-
move this along.
Impair learning at various times in the course of a year.
Yeah.
Okay?
But do you really want to say inadequate?
Yes.
I would care.
Oh,
Well,
no,
if
you
it's-
can.
If it's not inadequate, it's not a problem.
Right.
But it makes me think that you don't have any.
Or not enough.
Not
No,
It's not adequate.
It's not up
Not for
to
maybe-
par.
It's not where we want it to be.
Right.
We want
Some
rooms to
spaces-
feel 68 and be 68.
Some spaces don't have adequate heating and cooling. Not saying the whole building has inadequate heating and cooling, it's talking about limited number of spaces.
All right, it says limited numbers.
All right, and
Just good at where heating and ventilation and fair learning at various times of the year. Inadequate just seems a little strong.
I would characterize the ventilation in the science labs as inadequate in some areas. Not non-existent.
insufficient,
Non-existent.
more
Not
comfortable,
non-existent.
uneven.
Uneven's good.
Is everyone else okay with that even?
Oh my God.
Or
This is what
We're building consensus here.
No.
This is important.
we're writing by committee.
I know, it's the same
Okay,
thing.
that's the bane of my life.
So are we going with inadequate
I
or
just see a lot of
uneven?
phone calls going to Bill. That's not
What do you mean?
Put
Thank you.
slash
I've been doing a lot of it for
inadequate
free.
slash
Oh, inadequate, there's the compromise proposal.
Slash.
slash uneven.
Perfect.
Mr. Jefferson, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Bill's going to get a bunch of phone calls.
Okay, so for number 5, are we down there?
Yes.
Thank you. That middle sentence, or you know what, you want to read it because I know you're gonna. So you read it and then we can
All
put
right,
the
the
sentences
current
apart.
NRHS facility is in good overall shape, but starting to show its age. Increased maintenance and small capital projects are needed to prevent degradation of the building and grounds.
Is it?
Current NRS, let me finish reading.
Sorry, I'm
Current-
sorry.
You told me to start. Current NRSD plans to address these issues appear sufficient.
Okay. That middle sentence, isn't what you want to say that increased maintenance, small capital projects are needed to maintain a certain level. It's not needed to prevent degradation. You're already kind of at a
Okay.
deficit and you're trying to maintain where it is at. Do you understand what I'm trying to
Yeah, so
articulate?
I would change what you just said a little bit by
course you
saying
would.
increased maintenance. Well, I'm using maintenance two different ways there. Increased maintenance and small capital projects are needed to maintain the building and grounds.
In my opinion, that one sentence, in kind of like, and this is, so in my mind, facility is doing the best they can with what they have,
Right.
right? So it's not so I'm not saying this as a,
Oh,
you know, or
it's okay.
flex-
Here
but
comes,
this
honey.
sounds a lot more rosy than what you reviewed tonight, in my opinion.
This sounds rosy?
Yeah, I think this sounds, the building in good overall shape, we just gotta do some maintenance,
Okay,
and we're
Dave,
kinda pretty good.
jump in and tweak it. What do you think? No, seriously, you've got
Well-
a good idea. What do you think it should say?
I think that we should, you know, kind of, that the building is showing its age, and that they're, you know, kind of, the stuff where we talk about to address these issues appear sufficient. In my mind, this is kind of working a little backwards. We had talked about, you know, kind of like, hey, maybe there's 10-year budgets kind of to look at what capital projects would you need to do, whether it's roofing, insulation, window, like all those different things, which would actually be a later item. In order to have that be a later item, you kind of need to say that there's some issues here to get resolved, but it doesn't really sound like there's any issues here to get resolved, because it sounds like, hey, things are pretty good.
Because of the good overall shape.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, I think it's,
How about sound as opposed to good overall shape?
Yeah, or
And
functional,
it is
something
safe.
that's like it's working, but it's showing its age.
Okay, so it's
Yeah, we gotta show that the
functional.
building's not dangerous,
It's
you
not-
know?
oh,
this-
It's
It's very important. He's
I know it, and we don't want you to go anywhere, so we want you to be feeling like we love you, we love you.
I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
Don't overlook the
Right here.
fact that this doesn't say that current maintenance and small capital projects are needed. It says increased maintenance and small capital projects are needed.
but I didn't hear those are necessarily small capital projects,
Yeah, they sound-
replacing 70% of the roof.
Right, I mean, last year we replaced a $200,000 section of roof.
But see, that's why he needs to write the plan up to find, because it's gonna be a while. I mean, even if they decide to do a new building or renovate in a year, that's still 3 years off. So he still has to have a plan.
Absolutely, no,
You know,
absolutely.
so.
What about
that's-
instead of
we've already told
increase,
him
we
to do
said
that.
like sustained maintenance and
Yeah,
capital
sustained is better.
projects?
So
Because we
increased makes it sound
do,
like he's not doing his job.
Yeah.
You need to do more, Bill.
yeah, and instead of saying small capital projects, maybe just say capital projects.
Correct.
That's gonna encompass both the small
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
large and the things we may need to
I would
pay.
say prevent further degradation
I
or
agree.
whatever
I agree.
in the
Yeah.
middle, because it has
We need to keep
degraded
up. We
over
need-
time, and
Well,
it's
if you
gonna
say
take more.
prevent further, that says there's already
Degradation.
degradation.
But you already
But we
said
don't,
if I
I
say
don't
it's
really
not
think
show its
there
age.
is.
I would say
Don't
it's,
make it look like the building's unsafe. The building, we've already established, the building is safe. It is up to code and it is safe.
Yes.
See?
It's safe.
Okay.
So what is it gonna say?
Well, maybe that should be our
Yeah.
That should be the opening, you're right. Needed.
Could I propose the
To
first
maintain its
sentence?
safety.
The current Neshoba Regional Facility is sound, but showing its age,
What
period.
does showing its age mean?
It's older than us.
That's what the next sentence
Speak for
describes.
yourself.
The
Oh,
next
no,
sentence-
I'm sorry, that's not descriptive. That doesn't tell me anything other than I have a couple more crow's feet, whatever.
So the next sentence explains what that means. It says sustained maintenance and capital projects are needed to, phrase needed here, to something building and grounds.
Well, actually, I have a problem with grounds, but keep
Okay,
going.
sustained, so.
What was the first part of that first sentence?
So proposing the second sentence, sustained maintenance and capital projects are needed.
Okay, what was the
Period,
first
maybe.
part of the first sentence?
The first sentence, the current Neshoba Regional Facility is in sound shape, but showing its age.
So it's sound,
But showing,
which means it's safe, and it's functional.
but showing its age.
Not starting, but showing.
You know, I think that the meaning there is clear, is that just maintenance isn't gonna hack it anymore.
Well, then why don't you just, well, not that way, but why don't we say, we're at a point now where, you know, day-to-day maintenance isn't gonna resolve the issues that we have, which are becoming more infrequent capital projects, something like that. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
think that
what you
last
wanna
sentence,
say.
you know, kind of needs to kind of maybe address some of those concerns rather than that current plans address these issues, you know, sufficiently that, you know.
Can we say that day-to-day maintenance will no longer sustain?
Day-to-day maintenance will not preserve the building?
No.
No, day-to-day
because-
maintenance will not prevent further degradation of the building.
It's not well enough.
Or just prevent degradation?
Fine. Then we take further out and then we don't have that issue. Is that what you're worried about? What
Yeah, I
about
mean,
this?
again, we don't want to have a bunch of phone calls going to Bill because it doesn't sound like, it's not the building's going to.
Right,
about
we
that?
want to make sure
Can I make
that
a
the building is safe and.
Go ahead.
Although the building is safe, further capital projects and maintenance are needed to keep it as such.
Okay,
Is that better?
that works.
Okay, run that by me again? I'm running out
Although
of
the building is
space here.
safe,
Although the building is safe,
further capital projects and maintenance
Was
Are
it in
needed.
sustained maintenance?
Or
Show that
sustained.
one.
I mean, although the
Sustained.
building
Just
is
to show
safe.
Bill.
I know,
You're not going to stop.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not stopping.
Continue.
Although the building is safe,
further capital projects
yeah,
and sustained maintenance
Yeah.
are needed to keep it as such.
Well, there's a teacher.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Do we want do we want that to be it, or do we want that last sentence to be day-to-day maintenance will not prevent degradation of the building?
no.
That's
I-
not.
Well, how
That's
about
gone.
if you say day-to-day maintenance will not be a viable long-term solution?
Oh,
Oh, I
there you
like
go.
that.
There you go. Or is not will not. It is not.
Will not be
Okay, this is like
viable
crazy. I feel like I'm at work. Can we move on?
Almost done.
I know.
This is really just a marketing problem.
Honey, you give me that. You turn it over. It'll be fine.
What we have now is the current NRHS facility is in sound shape, but starting to show its age.
Showing.
But showing its age.
But showing its age, forget starting.
But showing its age. Day-to-day maintenance will not be a viable long-term solution. Although the building is safe, further capital projects and sustained maintenance are needed to keep it as such.
Kind of,
Take out
sort
grounds.
of.
And the reason I want grounds out of there
Because I think it repeats.
is because back when we paid the $2.2 million for the
Yeah.
grounds to be done.
I agree with you.
Right, yeah, I don't think grounds needs to be
I don't
there.
think
That's
grounds needs to be there.
That's
That's
beyond the
Oh,
scope.
okay.
That's outside of the
Yeah.
scope of this.
Grounds we dropped.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But we don't really have a dovetailed next step for that.
Well, actually, Bill's gonna,
No,
Give us
we
a 5-year
don't,
plan.
we don't have a dovetailed next step, because I'm not sure.
Bill's given us a plan.
Yeah, we
5-year
could say, you
plan.
know,
Need
we're
to
going
be
to develop
your-
a 10-year
Yeah, I'm not
Capital
sure that's
projects.
in our charter, but that's
But
fair
then it
discussion.
is within the job scope, so,
Okay.
I mean, that we basically have it.
We have it, you know, and I
it's
have
not
some
yet.
notes of things in the future that I keep on the radar, but
Yeah.
I can put it in writing.
So reviewing that plan is actually aligning with
There you go.
what we could do. Reviewing a 10-year, the facilities
All right.
manager's 10-year plan for needed stuff.
All right, so we will review 10-year plan for NRHS maintenance. Okay, and that
Capital
becomes
improvements and maintenance, right? That's all part of the,
Yes, capital
NRHS
improvements,
maintenance and capital improvements. Okay, so that ties back to step 5. And then on the next page, there are 2 more action items that we would be agreeing to pursue that don't tie to the general observations. And those would be, it would now be F, determine how to develop reliable projection of future NRHS enrollment. And G,
Why? Why are we gonna develop a reliable projection?
How do you know how much space you're gonna need if you don't know what the growth is gonna be?
Well, the MSBA won't take growth into effect, into their calculation at all. So if we go through the MSBA, it's not gonna matter.
and
Well,
if...
we're not gonna, but if we don't go to our town meetings and say with some kind of projection, well, why do you need the space 10 years from now?
Well, actually, the way the MSBA works is you have to prove, there's like 5 categories to go under, and you have to prove that you fit into one of those categories with your existing enrollment.
but that also just means you could build a building for growth. It just, MSBA is not gonna support the cost associated with the
Right.
little extra you want.
Right.
Here's
I
my
don't understand.
ever monthly statement. District can do whatever it wants. It doesn't need the support of the MSBA. You just have to pay 100% for it.
Right.
You can have a
Right.
pool if you
And
want
they
it.
determine
You
what
have
the
to pay.
percent is.
That's all.
And they would
So we're not
determine-
prevented from doing what we want when we figure out that that's the right thing to do. We just have to
But
pay
if you,
for it.
but if you explain to town meeting, yes, we could have the pool,
Right.
but MSBA won't, do you still wanna vote for it? The answer will be no. But at least it shows, it's based on enrollment, these are what we think makes sense. So you gotta know what that enrollment is, or projections, I mean, you can't guarantee it.
And what I was careful to do here is not to say that we're going to necessarily have one, just that we're going to figure out what it takes to get a reliable projection of enrollment. Determine how to get there,
Okay.
because you're right, we may just decide when we look at other stuff that it's not worth it.
Right.
So we're going to determine how we could do it if we wanted. And then G was understand the curriculum goals and determine if achieving these goals is affected by space limitations. That, in effect, was what Perry did at the last meeting.
And I have a question on this one. When we had to go talk in front of the selectmen, they wanted to know why the school was looking for space. You know, what was the criteria? And as I was talking to them, I realized what I came out with was, okay, they definitely need science labs. But then as Perry was talking, what came out was the core subjects which we're covering, we're kind of okay with it, except for the science getting squishy. But it's the arts that are really driving the space needs, because the arts are becoming more of a core curriculum. So at the end of it, I wondered, okay, so what are we? Are we a STEM school or are we a STEAM school? And based on what we decide we're going to be, that would determine the space needs.
And I agree with you completely. At the Tri-Town, I made a statement that their school committee doesn't have curriculum goals, and I think that's another way of saying that's what I was referring to, was we don't really, we are going to be charged at some point with saying what kinds of classes are we going to support and what kinds of classes are we not going to support. And ideally, we would be able to look at something from the school committee that says, this is the kind of school we want to be and the kinds of classes we want to support, and that would help us make our decisions. But there's no guidance like that right now.
Well,
So
I think that's not correct. I mean, our policy is guided by our credit policy. So we know very well what we want for curriculum. Where we have some broader options is around electives. But even there, we have a sense of the types of electives we want. We want theater, we want art, we want what I would refer to as engineering. And so we know what our curriculum goals are. Those are our curriculum goals. That we need classes and classrooms to fit those courses.
But I think, if I understood Perry correctly, what is driving a lot of this lack of space is the need for the arts.
Well, it's those electives, those pieces of the puzzle.
But they're becoming core courses for
Well,
a
they're
lot
required.
of kids.
They're required, yeah.
But wasn't some of it also kind of like the different levels of advanced placement type classes, so that
Well, that'll always be a
core
factor.
things
Yeah.
that kind of like
That'll always
that
be a
impact.
factor.
Because I took out of it that it was much more than just the labs and electives, that there were other classroom needs besides those two things that were in, I think he mentioned something about 10 classrooms or something at one point.
Right.
Kind of.
For the
But they were
traditional
all-
core subject, but I think what Lynn is talking about is the part of the, I don't want to say curriculum, I don't know how else to say it, that's not as fully developed, that's in high demand. And that is, depending on who you're asking, as important as the core
But
curriculum.
wasn't some of it like computer programming and some of it was like
That's an elective, right?
certain different
Graphic arts.
kinds of
The business
journalism?
courses
That's right.
But they're not.
The business
They're
courses.
not supported.
Right.
But again, I mean, even if you just take out, if I were to say, are we a STEM school? And I would say, well, I think I know of one engineering class. I don't know about technology. Technology could pretty much be anything. I'm not really sure how that gets defined. But, we definitely have sciences, we definitely have math. But as Perry was talking, I kept hearing art. It was the art that was
Jody,
getting
too.
squished out. It was the art that was, demanding the space. It was the art that they couldn't accommodate. So it was more kids in the arts that weren't getting accommodated than there were in the.
Mhm.
So it was it's almost like a shift. We're not. I don't know if we're a fully STEM school, but we're definitely heading towards a STEAM school because the
Or a
A's are
comprehensive
becoming more
school.
prominent.
We're really a comprehensive academic high school.
And I
But
would,
that doesn't mean anything
We want to be.
I would also say that even though he didn't emphasize it as equally, that the engineering component, I mean, we know we want to grow that and there isn't the space to do so, but perhaps there are fewer types of courses we would go for because arts is just so much broader. So he may have,
Maybe.
I mean,
Maybe that's
just
what you
based
think.
on
broader because
conversations
you don't
I've had.
necessarily. That's not fair, but okay.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's, I mean, like, Engineering the Future is the only engineering class that I
Right.
know about, and even that was touchy when my son first went into it. But
space has prevented us from really fully developing the kinds of engineering courses that we would like to have.
But
Well,
I don't
but-
know enough about that to respond, because I can only tell you what I knew about 3 years ago, but,
But that's not fair either, because then you could always say, we as a district made the commitment that we're going to not offer these classes, so we could broaden that program, so.
Right, and it, just as a member of the committee, I would like some direction on that kind of thing. Is the intent of the high school to be STEM? Should it be more comprehensive? If it's more comprehensive, is it going to be more comprehensive in the theater arts, or music, or business, which is also seriously oversubscribed? I'd love some direction about that.
Well, by the nature of a comprehensive high school, you offer pathways so that you have.
But there's no point in offering a pathway if 2 years into it, the students stymied because they don't have enough classes to fulfill. It's like going to college and saying, I want to be an anthropology major, but you don't have any junior and senior level anthropology classes.
Right, no, I understand.
And what I would like to get from the powers on high is, no, we don't have a very well-developed theater program right now, but that's where we want to go. Or we don't have a very well-developed business program right now, but that's where we want to go. Or, no, we want all of it, and you'll just have to figure out how to do it.
Well, no, but just like you said, so you've said it, essentially what we need. We have the course credits, that's the guide. You need X number of credits to graduate. As a comprehensive high school, we have the fields of study that we're already offering. We need to have offerings for freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, so there has to be a full complement of courses available. Now, how many under each, I don't think that we can tell you today, because it may change as it ebb and flows based on student choice, but we want to offer that full complement for every year ongoing.
I'm uncomfortable with leaving it up to the students to determine the curriculum.
They're not determining the curriculum, they're determining the number of courses we offer. We're determining the curriculum.
Okay.
And we've determined the areas of study that we're going to offer. That's already been established.
So the areas we've already branched into, we are going to expand.
We want to have full complement for each year study, yes.
Like the no theater.
Are you comfortable with
Right.
that?
I'm not, because the way, just from what I heard Perry say, I don't exactly understand what comprehensive means, but it just dawned on me as he was talking, and as I explained to the selectmen, it says, well, you know, the space requirements and where he was squishy was, you know, as he explained it, was arts and science. And I was like, all right, well, maybe we need to redefine who we are so that we know what we need to get for space. So I don't know. I'm not really sure what comprehensive means.
It means all-encompassing. It means offering a wide variety to students. It means not being solely a STEM school. It means more choices.
So we
But
would
I don't
have
think
to-
it's this committee's job to
It's not.
determine what they
It's
offer.
not.
We need to leave that to the professionals.
Oh, no.
But
if I can
we're
turn that
gonna
upside
back, but Heather, we're gonna back into being in that, we are gonna make those decisions.
I don't
Because we're
see
either
how.
gonna recommend, 4 classrooms, or 10 classrooms, or 20 classrooms. And
But
depending on
a
which.
lot of classrooms are multi-purpose. It's just the science ones and gym
And the computer rooms.
And the computer
theater.
rooms, and
Okay.
the theater, and the art classes, and the broader choices you offer, the more types of specialized classes you need, classrooms you need.
Right.
And, as I see us going down the path, we are in fact going to be making the decisions that affect the curriculum. Or
Well,
we're gonna
we are
affect-
going to be taking the
Making some
input from
and
the
guidance
administration.
from the administration.
As far as,
It's not, I don't see it as our call.
So here's a phrase that might help, something that I said last spring. I would like to engage with a program-driven facilities assessment. And we have a de facto program. It's migrating in various ways over the last few years. But we actually have a curriculum right now, even though it may not be defined as a mission. And it's sort of demand-driven electives curriculum with a base. But we do know something about the program that exists right now in ways that it's weak. As I was asking Perry a few meetings ago, where are the places that the program is being fulfilled, and where are places that it's failing or impaired in terms of what the intended program is? And I think that Perry, in large part, answered that question, saying these are the areas that were impaired in our current de facto program.
Yeah, he gave us a big handout on it.
So I think, in that sense, I feel like Perry has made a really good effort towards demanding my desire, which is what is the program, so that we can figure out how facility is impaired or aids the program, so we make a program-driven facilities assessment. Does that help
Right, but
this
that's
discussion
from,
right
that's
now?
from Perry, and that's from Michael, it's not from us.
Right, but they're saying this is the existing program, this is the de facto program we've got. Here's where we're bumping up against trouble. And by the way, here are the areas we'd like to go. We know we'd like to go there because they're electives that we are able to count. Kids can't get the class. And then we also know it's the side issue where there are kids that are in study halls and may or may not really want to be there.
Could I make a suggestion that I will go back and update this? And this really needs to be accepted by a vote, which we should do at the next meeting. But I think we need to go back and discuss this under step G further at the next meeting.
That's good.
Yep.
Okay?
We have-
I would also like to ask the committee's opinion of something I'd like to do. I would like to offer to sit down with Perry and Jody and whoever else is appropriate and do a deep dive into the issues around the science labs. What exactly are the problems with them? Why are they difficult to schedule and stuff like that? With the idea of bringing back a report to the March meeting to this committee to consider that. The reason I'd like to do this is I think we need to start nailing down what we know and what we don't know, and this interim report is a good first step of that. But I think if I were, I'd like to, I think the science labs are the easiest place to build consensus and put the issues to bed. And then we could just stop talking about them and go on to other issues. So if that's okay with the committee,
can you just add why it might be good that you do that?
In earlier times, I basically had a career advising people and implementing planning and scheduling systems in different kinds of manufacturing and distribution areas. Dealing with constraints, dealing with competing requirements for space, for facilities, stuff like that. So at various times, I would go into, I worked for Teradyne, a company called Teradyne, which is now in Reading. It was in Boston at the time, which was electronics manufacturing. I was in the planning and scheduling end of that business, and then went into planning and scheduling software for 10 or 12 years as either in sales or as a consultant. Working to identify, sitting down, talking to people, understanding what their planning and scheduling issues were, and then standing up and reporting it out again. So if everybody's comfortable with that approach, as opposed to kind of all fleshing it out by committee, I think it would speed things up. But I don't want to just go do that on my own. I'd like to.
Would you like to do that with a vote of this committee?
I don't need a vote, I just need consensus. I'd like to know if anybody has any objections, or if they want to make sure I cover something or don't cover something or anything like that.
I'm good.
We're good. Anybody
Okay.
else? Good?
Anybody not good?
Show of hands. Put them up.
All right,
Good, go.
okay, thank you.
That's a vote. Without a vote.
All right, so our next meeting is February 5th. And Jody's going to be the main item on the agenda there. And again,
That's in
I'll
2 weeks.
yeah, I'll come back in March.
February.
And our meeting in March is March 19th. So is it,
Yes.
would that be good for you, Bob?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll meet again right after the alleged cheaters win the Super Bowl.
Oh!
I said alleged.
You know.
All right.
Everybody's always
Anything
trying
else
to
that we
kick
need
the hot
to-
dog.
Address or?
No, nothing we need to address. I wanted to pass one article to you and one to Bob, since he's
I
collecting these
can
things.
send them out electronically so
Sure.
everybody gets copies of both
Sure,
these articles.
it's about overcrowding in classrooms.
Nice.
And I just forwarded, Bob, something to you that Heather forwarded to me that you're gonna find really interesting about that.
Okay.
Some data.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Great meeting. Thank you, everybody.
And thanks, Bill, for all the good work.
Yes, thank you, Bill.
See, Bill, we love you.